So the other day, I covered Dr. K having this take on male life circumstances that lead them to K themselves. That's what it was about. So Dr. K basically, in fact, we'll watch just this little clip that Cherry here has posted. We're gonna go over the responses to these tweets, and then we're gonna watch the live stream that Dr. K's just done as well. So we can go over everything. Don't worry, we're gonna get through all of it. But Cherry posted a clip from my stream on Twitter, which I'm always very happy to see clipping of my content on Twitter. That is always great. So let's just listen to this so we can get some context here.
I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living.
They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living.
They're looking at things and objectively realizing that there's no way out of this situation.
They're looking at things and objectively realizing that there's no way out of the situation. No. Where is the to them, you fucking idiot? Listen. Idiot.
So they turn to suicide.
Yep.
So I know it's kind of like a
tragic. Yeah,
very controversial statement, but I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up.
Where is the to them?
So people are mad.
Where is the to them? He says they genuinely have a life that is not worth living. He says they genuinely have a life that is not worth living. That is what he's saying about their life. It is genuinely not worth living. Then he says about their mental state, they have looked at things objectively, free from any subjective interpretation, free from their feelings. They have looked at the facts, and they have realized, not they believe, not they have deluded themselves into thinking, they have realized. The fuck do you mean same shirt? The fuck do you mean same It's not even... I've got a black fleece on with a grey shirt in that clip. Here, I'm clearly wearing a grey fleece with a white shirt. What do you mean same shirt? What do you mean same shirt? None of it's the same. It doesn't even look the same. They have come to learn the truth, which is that there is no way out. That is what he's saying. That is the only interpretation of what he's saying. The truth is ever changing. So, what are you fucking confused about here? What brand fleece you like that? I think that's my favorite fleece. That's a North Face. That's a North Face fleece. That's Listen, let's not get distracted on pop collars and fleeces, okay? So we're trying to do a segment here. Okay, so obviously in that clip, it is pretty explicit. Dr. K is saying two things. He's saying these people, the reality of these people's lives, these men, about half of men who kill themselves, he thinks, the reality of their lives is that they are so bad in their current state that they're not worth living. They're not a life that anyone should live. Okay, that's fine. However, the qualifier that I think makes that quite bad in that clip, because like it's okay to say that a lot of the reason men kill themselves, you know, men are more prone to homelessness and stuff like that. Like, is that really a life worth living? A life of homelessness and poverty? It probably, you know, it's fucked. So that's one thing. But he says that it is a logical conclusion, a logical and objective conclusion that there is no way out. That there's no way out, that they can't build up the life skills that they can't, in their position, they cannot get to where they need to be to have a life worth living. That they can't do that. So it is not just a statement of empathy with how bad the situation is for these people. It is a statement on the potential for them to improve, or the potential for them to learn to live a different kind of life and accept it. Yeah, exactly. Or it is a statement on the potential for the situation to get better. He is saying, no, your options are misery. If you're in that position, if you're one of those 50% of people, 50% of men who kill themselves, if you're one of those 50% of men who kill themselves, your options actually were a life of abject misery or suicide. It wasn't a life of abject misery, suicide, or going to therapy, seeking proper help, looking for support mechanisms, going to job centers, going and retraining with new skills and looking for ways to try and earn more money and get into more social situations and improve your life. It's not those are not the three. Those were not your three options. That's not what Dr. K is saying. Dr. K is clearly saying your two options were abject misery or kill yourself. That is what he was saying. I don't want anyone to sit there and fucking bullshit me. That's not what was said. I went through it so clearly, so clearly with people the other night. So I don't want to hear this shit again in chat tonight, okay? Because I went over it for so long. We had the whole debate with Kenny. Obviously, Kenny has been reeling from the horrific L he took the other day. You can go watch that in the video that was posted today if you want to see Kenny getting absolutely fucking embarrassed, totally embarrassing himself. It was really sad that Kenny came on and did that. So I'm just getting the boot in. So we're going to go over to some of the responses to Cherry's tweet here. I want to go over some of the ones that were being mean to me first. Oh, I suppose I'll read the tweet as well. Cherry said, I'm not sure how anyone heard Dr. K not say, so it's strange double negative, which is, yeah, not say half his male patients shouldn't want to live, lol. So someone replies, the guy in the video reactions, Dr. K, sounds so dumb, as if emotions have no part in coming to a logical conclusion. Fucking moron. Objective of a personal judgment, not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. The guy in the reaction video to Dr. K sounds so dumb, as if emotions have no part in coming to a logical conclusion. Fucking more. I'm going to have an aneurysm. Yes, this is about me. Yes. This guy is just post thought. This is not post thought. This is not post thought. This is just bad thought, okay? There is a difference. Post thought and lack of thought are not the same. To be post thought, you have to first understand and then unshackle yourself. So again, we're going to look at another one here. It's pretty clear that what he's saying is meant to be a "this is what they believe" statement. I swear people are getting dumber by the day and severely lacking in nuance / critical thinking skills. He reiterates, he uses 3 different words. 3 different words to qualify his statement, to make it explicitly clear what he was saying. Genuinely, objectively, realize. In 3 different ways, he reiterates the same sentiment that this is not their judgment. This is not a failure in judgment, not a failure in thought process, not a failure in thinking of the person, but a reality of their situation. Okay, here's another retarded one I want to look at. Fuck off. Fucking gay creative clap. I'm going to do Adobe. Adobe. I'm coming. Can you confirm whether you... Oh my god. Can you confirm whether you watched the original video without this Britard self-righteously screaming over the Asmongold video of it? He says the reason they have this realization is because of thwarted belongingness, rejection, rather than having any mental pathology. So I am the retard, yet he has attempted to disagree with my statement by presenting a statement that is not mutually exclusive. It doesn't actually contradict what I said. The reason for someone killing themselves can be spurred on. It can be the reason they come to this realization can be from thwarted belongingness, That can be the case. That does not have bearing on whether or not it is a reality of the situation. Their life is actually that bad and actually unfixable. This actually has no bearing on either of those 2 things. This does not contradict that at all. I don't know why you would even type this. And look, this guy as well. I just want to, fucking. I'm sure you saw it. Well, ugh. Okay, right. Okay, any more? Do we have any more we want to go over? Because otherwise I just want to watch. Oh, wait, we'll go over these. I believe Destiny did agree with me on it. We'll go over that as well afterwards, I think. So this person tweets. This is Alicia. I have and continue to hate Dr. K. I have zero clue how his licenses have not been revoked. He has a business in which unqualified liaisons are providing care to those in need of mental help. They did not need any qualifications, any degrees, any background checks, and 0 state clearances, such as mandate child abuse courses or domestic abuse courses. In this video that so many are giving him a W, or he's so based, he's fucking not. He's a person with credentials acting recklessly. The mind of someone who is ill, and here's what he said in this clip, are getting validation from Dr. K that they're not ill and that it's true that they should commit S. This man is a walking liability and lawsuits step away from his ultimate downfall. So this is typed horribly, I gotta say. I hope his license gets revoked. He's beyond reckless and a joke to the field of practice. Apparently this woman's like a psychologist or some shit as well. I don't know, she said some shit about that. But I at least felt less insane. Is that an OSRS streamer? I've got no idea. But she said that she was some fucking... I don't know. Let me see. It was in the thread. Well, I don't know if she's saying psychologist, actually. Works in a field of practice. With a degree. I don't know what that's about. Yeah. Don't care. Don't care. I do not care. Anyway. let's move on to the actual Dr. K stream. So Dr. K did a response stream today to all the drama. We need to talk about male S. So how long is this stuff? So this is at 2 hours, and this is just amazing stuff. The wisdom of the East. Thank you, Dr. K. My doshas are feeling very aligned right now. Feel the AoE healing, guys. Need to stop. Wait, where's the picture? I need you to see the picture. God. The Ponuts are in check. Dude, Ponuts are going crazy right now. Wait, here it is. It's so goofy, man. It's so goofy. It's so goofy. It's like actually like it's like I don't know, like fetishization of like Indian shit or something to try and sell it to white people. Yeah, frequent total poser, total poser. All right, anyway, let's get into this fucking this live stream, all right? Thank you for the 9.99 Topher.
Stafrex super chatted $9.99. $9.99 from Stafrex. The want to obfuscate, to obscure, to attempt to reinterpret something he said so objectively clear, says more about you, more than him. Reflect upon your actions, to cover for this promotion of death.
Thank you, Topher, for the $10. All right. Okay. So what am I looking for here, okay? What am I looking for? What's going to exonerate Dr. K for me here? All right. I want to lay down some my criteria, I think, before we get into it, okay? Because here's my problem. I think what's going to happen is this is going to get reframed. His statement is going to get reframed. I think he is going to what he's going to try and do, if I were to guess, is basically he's going to say, oh, you know, the point I'm trying to make is lots of men who kill themselves don't have pathologies. They actually just have poor life circumstances that lead to them killing themselves. Okay. That's fine. We understand that was part of the point you were trying to make. What I need him to specifically walk back, I think, is he needs to specifically walk back the idea that there is genuinely no way out, that there is no way of fixing the situation. He needs to specifically walk it back. Not just make statements that say like, oh, on an individual level, we should try and help these people. That he's made a broad statement that for most of these people, there's no helping them. That you will not be able to fix the situation. They cannot fix the situation. He's made that statement. That was in that statement. That was part of the meaning. So if he does not specifically walk that back, he's still saying the same thing as far as I'm concerned. Like, he might be able to word it in a more positive way here that doesn't sound like he's telling people that they should kill themselves. But if that's still his position, then I still consider it fucking insane. And also, he needs to accept that it was, like, at least, like, crazy irresponsible to word it in that way in the first place. But we will get into it. That's what I'm looking for here, okay? That's what I'm looking for here. So if he does not specifically walk back the idea that it's unfixable, I do not consider this a Dr. K dub. If he admits that he was wrong on that part, that was insane and not correct, then we'll see. Pretty sure it was never his position, but it was irresponsible to phrase it in that way. But okay, do we need to go over the clip again, you fucking idiot? Because if you interpret in any other way, you are literally reading something that's not there. You're hearing something that he's not saying. You're imagining things. You're making stuff up. It was entirely his position. He argued from his... Yes. Yeah. He's arguing from his perspective. He's not arguing from their perspective. He's not arguing from the patient perspective. He's not talking about their experience. He's saying, I'm looking at these people. I'm seeing your life is so fucked and there's no way of fixing it. Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Oh my God. That's such a... Yeah, that is a good way of explaining it. Okay. Yes, and exactly. What? It's not controversial. It is not fucking controversial to say that lots of men kill themselves because their life circumstances are so bad. Men suffer from homelessness at higher rates. Like, basically any material condition issue that you can think of, men suffer with worse than women do. Because of the fact that women occupy, like, positions in society where they can essentially get taken care of by a lot of either institutions or other people around them. That's generally the way it is. People take care of women. That's how society's set up. People don't take care of men. So almost any material condition thing, men are going to be worse off in, generally. So to say, oh, lots of men kill themselves because of their material conditions, that's not a fucking controversial opinion. Why would he say that's a controversial opinion if that's all he was saying? The controversial part is the fact he thinks it can't be fixed. Obviously. So insane. I can't believe people are actually trying to just make shit up on this. They just imagine that he said something else. Because it's like, well, there's no way a therapist would say something so fucking stupid. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Oh, my God.
Alrighty, chat. Let's get started. So, my hair's a little bit messed up today. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder. Uh-oh. Do we have lag? Okay, we'll deal with it. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is...
No, Rita. He specifically says, that life is genuinely that bad. And he says they have looked at the situation objectively and realized that there is no way out other than suicide. That's what he says.
It's intended to be taken as
almost
medical
verbatim.
Advice. Everything is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If y'all have a medical concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. That's very true, especially about what we're going to talk about today, because we are going to talk about suicide.
I need to move my camera
in men, and I'm going to try to clarify a couple of things that I said. I wish I could say they were taken out of context, but honestly, I think there was some amount of fair context there. And then we're also...
Oh my God. So every fucking sped in those replies that was saying, oh, it's taken out of context. Oh, you'd have to listen to the full context. Literally immediately he says, no, it was probably in full context.
Suicide, and specifically in men, and I'm going to try to clarify a couple of things that I said. I wish I could say they were taken out of context, but honestly, I think there was some amount of fair context there. And then we're also going to do something. So we're and then we're going to talk about that, because I did this thing where I showed up on the internet.
So out of context, no longer an argument. Dr. K has conceded that one for you guys. He is giving that up. Okay, Dr. K speds, therapy speds. Okay, you can no more context argument. You've given up that fight. All right, it's over. It's done. It was done anyway because we watched the full fucking segment on my stream in that video. I believe the full segment's in there. So that argument was already dead because he never at any point in that makes it at all apparent that he's talking about anything to do with their perspective or a delusion they are suffering.
I was recently on a podcast called Diary of a CEO. This podcast...
Shuri Satoshi super chatted $4.99. $4.99 from Shuri Satoshi, chirp.
Thank you for the $4.99.
has gotten a lot of views. People started posting clips about it, and then my favorite thing happened on the internet. People started reacting to it. And so I'm new to this kind of thing.
That's me.
But now what I'm
No, you're not. No, you're not.
To do, because I understand this is how things happen, is I'm going to react to some of the reactions. And what I'd love to do is clarify a little bit about what I was saying. But then also continue to...
Doobie, please. Please. But thank you for the $4.20.
talk about this, because I think this is like really important to understand. And I think some people on the internet like seem to, I don't want to say that they misinterpreted what I was going to say, because I think technically that's not what happened. I think they made some assumptions about things that I was saying, which I don't think are correct. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And then what I'd really like to do is I'm going to...
Made assumptions about things that he was saying he doesn't think are correct. Okay. There was no assumption that needed to be made there for it to be an insane statement. Literally no assumptions. You just had to read your statement as you spoke it. The exact wording, the meaning held within the wording, incontrovertibly, undeniably indicated one single meaning, which is that for most men who kill themselves, their lives are so bad that it is genuinely just suicide or nothing but abject misery for as long as they carry on. That is the clear meaning. It is not an assumption. That was the meaning held in your statement with the words as you spoke them.
I'm going to show y'all like a bucket of research about why I believe what I believe, what this means for you, and then hopefully at the end, I will share with y'all what I think we should do.
May I suggest you eat a clove of garlic and open your heart chakra, Kuihman. I'm sensing some annoyance. And then, nice.
Some way about male suicide. I haven't really fleshed that part out yet, but I feel like ranting a little bit, so we'll see where it goes. Okay? So a couple of other things just to keep in mind. So sometimes when I talk about things, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of my clinical experiences.
The brainlets in his YouTube chat. You know what I saw? I actually screenshotted it. I can't be able to get off my phone, but I screenshotted it. There were people in his YouTube chat begging. I mean, begging. They were in there begging. They were going, Dr. K, please give me a discount on your course. Dr. K, please give me a discount on your course. So weird. So this ain't right. Something's not right. Internet, I'm not convinced on all this online mental health content stuff. I'm not convinced on all this stuff. I'm not convinced on psychology as a whole, to be honest with you. So turning it into this poppy medicine, but made for entertainment thing is just like, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. The whole point of I'm not even gonna make that joke. There's a joke that Deeper Armor makes sometimes that therapy is just designed to prepare men to be more like prone to be raped, like more easy to rape, more rapeable. It's just a plot by women to make it so men can be raped. Second monitor psychology, yes. Second monitor psychology. There is no way this is good for you. Why is this Elijah person spamming? Guys, I'm recently transitioned and having my first period. Are you good? Stay strong, Queen. Stay strong, Queen.
A couple of other things to keep in mind. Sometimes when I talk about clinical experiences, they will include things that are clinically relevant, which is kind of like my way of saying, I guess this is like a trigger warning, because I'm going to be like sharing some of my clinical experiences working with people who are suicidal, working with people who have been traumatized or abused, things like that. As always, and if you guys don't know this, whenever I talk about these things, everything that I talk about is chimerical, which...
Okay, listen, you'll get... the spamming is just retarded. It's just annoying.
Means that, like, this people...
Okay,
a couple of other things to keep in mind. Sometimes when I talk about clinical experiences, they will include things that are clinically relevant, which is kind of like my way of saying, I guess this is like a trigger warning, because I'm going to be like sharing
Hello 321 super chatted $2. $2 from Hello 321. Kui, you losing weight? Could be anorexia nervous.
I don't think I have any weight to lose, to be honest with you. Hello. But thank you for the continued interest in my health. I love that you come in here every night to poke and prod at my current health status. Honestly, it's like it's the highlight. Honestly, it's the highlight of my evening. But thank you for the $2.
Working with people who are suicidal, working with people who have been traumatized or abused, things like that. As always, and if you guys don't know this, whenever I talk about these things, everything that I talk about is chimerical, which means that, like, if I say, like, I saw a patient who was XYZ, like, I change all that stuff out to protect privacy, but the essence of the story is true, and it's usually, like, multiple people that this applies this to, okay? So there's a couple of quick disclaimers. So a couple of other simple things. So
we're waiting for Dr. K to lay down the facts and logic.
Struggling with suicide, I strongly, strongly, strongly urge you to seek mental health help from a professional. If you're actually in danger today, please go seek.
Well, what's that going to do for men? What's that going to do for men? They're not mentally ill when they kill themselves. How's that going to help? How's that going to help? That doesn't make any sense.
Emergency services, call 911 in the United States. Depending on what country you're in, it's like 112 or all kinds of other things. And hopefully, if you don't feel like doing that quite yet, I will make an argument by the end of wherever we end up today as to why that is a good idea and the right move. Okay? So let's start with the reactions.
Also, I'm going to say now, right, I pre-watched one bit of this because I flicked to a Destiny stream because I heard that Destiny had reacted to it and I wanted to see how substantial it was. So I flicked to it and watched about 5 minutes of it. There is a hilarious, very obvious misuse of stats that I caught on Destiny stream earlier. And oh man, it's fucking terrible. It makes me think that it's so bad that I honestly wonder if it's just straight up dishonest. If he's just straight up doing it dishonestly. If it's intentionally bad.
Okay, so Dr. K did something silly. Okay? I did something silly, and that silly thing was I opened my mouth. And then the rest of the general internet was paying attention for once. And let's see what happened. Oh, okay. Looks like you guys do not have a audio input here. Let me see if I can add one real quick. Can Dr. K add a tech support check? Audio output capture. Desktop audio. Let's call it this. And then default device. Okay, let's see if this works. Suicide. Okay, there we go. All right, so for some reason, this video seems pretty quiet to me. So y'all may have to turn up the volume a little bit. It's jacked up all the way over here.
Jesus Christ, dude. You've been streaming for 5 years, haven't you? Fuck me.
With male suicide is not depression. And this is super scary. There's one study I saw recently that suggests that 50% of men who kill themselves have no history or evidence of mental illness. And this, I believe the statistic in my clinical practice because I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I work with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, they're not...
Okay, this is going to take some time to get through, so we're going to... It's a long VOD, so I'm going to just... We're going to settle in.
Very controversial statement, but I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up. Okay, so I think there's a lot of things here. Okay, so this is what I said. We'll show you the papers in a little bit. And I think some people are getting caught up in this word objective, so just a quick kind of disclaimer. So so this is challenging when you're speaking about stuff on the internet. Is that
getting caught up in this word objective? Okay, so it wasn't just objective. Let's make this perfectly fucking clear. Okay, it was not just the word objective. All right. Because here's the argument, here's the reframing I think .k will attempt to make here. He will say that objective was not saying that the judgment was fact, but that objective refers to objects in the world, as in it's the circumstances, the material circumstances of their life that are making them feel like that, not a pathology. But that does not account for the genuinely and the realize. He makes it very clear. He makes it very clear what he's saying in that clip. But we'll keep watching. I'm gonna keep this on a slower speed, actually. I think.
That everything? So if I'm giving a talk about male suicide, there's enough space in the talk to add the nuance, add the complexity, add the disclaimers. And then sometimes when you do something like go on a podcast, you are by necessity forced to simplify things. Because you're making another point. So in this video, I'm not talking about male suicide as the primary point. I'm using it as a statistic to talk about in context with a larger conversation. So just to give you all a quick heads up, the whole interview was 2.5 hours. I think it got edited down to 1 hour and 8 minutes. And I'm not saying that they did a bad job or anything like that. That's just how things go, right? I may have scratched my balls somewhere in the middle of the interview and they chose to edit that out. Thank you all very much from Diary of a CEO. I think they did a great job with editing. I'm not saying that I got taken out of context or anything like that. But now let's look at some of the reactions, right? So why live if your life is stupid?
Totally, he's totally denying any claims that that's out of context. So I never want to see any fucking retards bringing this stupid fucking argument up again. Man.
Oh, why not take a huge risk? What do you have to lose? That's how you should teach depressed men to think. Fuck it, bro. Go all in. You're already dead. It's all upside from here. So I think that this is one example of one of the responses, right? Is if someone's life sucks, what do you have to lose? Why do you not take a huge risk? I don't know why this person put depressed in quotes. I'm confused about what that means, but I think it's some people kind of feel this way, right? So this is kind of good. It's kind of positive, right? I guess I'm not sure. What
do you mean they don't understand? Wait, how's he struggling with this?
Live if your life is stupid. Well, why not take a huge risk? What do you have to lose? That's how you should teach depressed men to think. Fuck it, bro. Go all in. You're already dead. It's all upside from here. So I think that this.
Yeah. So this guy's point is that what you should is that instead of saying, "Yeah, your life's totally fucked, bro," to someone who's quote unquote depressed, meaning not actually depressed, just in a completely fucked life situation, is, "Hey, why don't you take a risk and try and improve your situation, put yourself out there." That's the idea he's trying to get across here. How does Dr. K not understand why depressed is in quotation marks there? Obviously, it's because he's talking about the same people as you who are depressed because of circumstance, not depressed because of a pathology. You fucking idiot. What do you mean? Why does he put depressed in quotation marks? How are you not getting that? What? You It's a Mike Cernovich tweet as well. Why is he replying to Mike Cernovich? Dude. He really just pulled up a Cernovich tweet and was like, "Oh yeah, so this guy's got a kind of okay take." That's kind of funny.
This is one example of one of the responses, right? Is if someone's life sucks, what do you have to lose? Why do you not take a huge risk? I don't know why this person put depressed in quotes. I'm confused about what that means, but I think it's some people kind of feel this way, right? So this is kind of good. It's kind of positive.
It's kind of good. It's kind of positive. Oh my god. Bear in mind what Cernovich probably thinks by take a huge risk when you feel like your life is fucked. Just go and Can I even joke about that? I don't even know. Yeah, fuck it.
Like,
Never mind.
you know, I guess I'm not sure. And then hold on, let me see if I can. God, I can't stand my self-talk. I've had 3 friends who committed suicide, all of them men. 2 were married, 1 had a 4-year-old daughter. All of them had lots of close friends. 1 was highly paid service. Lives worth living is bullshit intended to pander to a social media audience.
So I've had 3 friends committed suicide, all of them men. 2 were married, 1 had a 4-year-old daughter. All of them had lots of close friends. 1 was a highly paid surgeon. Lives not worth living is bullshit intended to pander to a social media audience. Okay. Well, I mean, this is an anecdote, but I mean, so is Dr. K's, right? He was talking about because here's the thing: is that you can say no history or evidence of mental illness, but that's not true, because I would say killing yourself is pretty good evidence of mental illness, right? It's just that they hadn't sought help before they killed themselves. That's the point, really, isn't it? That's what I thought. That's what that study, what that data is usually meant to try and say. But Dr. K is using it as like, no, they don't have mental illness. They are seeing everything for how it truly is. It's like, no, I don't think that's how that data's meant to be. I don't think that's how it's used.
So when I first saw this tweet, you know, I got a little bit upset and I was like, oh my God, right? This person doesn't understand what I'm saying. I think that, you know, like, but let's remember, like, this is X or Twitter, right? And this is the...
Yes, yeah. It's like saying someone with undiagnosed, well, I mean, kind of, because you can, the thing is that with cancer is that you can verify the cancer after the death, but you can't verify a mental illness after death, really.
Internet.
That's the problem.
And what happens, like, you know, I wasn't trying to pander to a social media audience. I thought the way that what was in my head is I'm trying to raise awareness about a mental health issue that I think is troubling. Like, I mean, if I was pandering to a social media audience, I think I would have said it in an accent. Dude,
I was trying to raise awareness. This is what TikTokers do when they step on some toes with incorrect rhetoric. That's the sort of thing TikTokers... Not when a licensed therapist has said that suicide is the logical answer. That's not raising awareness, dude. You're giving, like, a statement on an issue in a field where you have a credential and a license and obligations and patience. Raising awareness isn't fucking good enough, dude. What the fuck? This is so ill. Oh, man. People actually buy this shit, too. Fucking sped. Wholesome 100 TikTok homosexuals. We need to raise awareness on this issue. We need to raise awareness. Now.
You know? And so my first reaction was that, like, okay, this person is like, you know... But, I mean, I think the person probably comes from a good place. And let's remember, like, why would this person interpret what I'm doing as pandering to a social media audience? I don't know. Maybe because they spend some time on this place called the internet, where a lot of content creators, like, this is what we do. Right?
Is he... You said you spend too much time online to fucking No Opinion. Isn't No Opinion literally a fucking Bloomberg journal?
Right? So I think that this is like a helpful comment, if a little bit misdirected, which even then I can't really blame them for, right? Because what are they reacting to? They're reacting to a 50-second clip of a 1 hour and 8 minute video that was edited from a 2 hour and 30-minute interview.
Okay. He keeps saying this. What he has said in 2 parts of this stream already, he has said, I think proper context was given, and he said, I'm not saying that there was a lack of context, that there was a lack of context that would have changed the meaning. He said, like, both of those things, yet he's reiterating now, oh, well, he's reacting to just a shortened down clip. You said there's no context that changes the meaning. We've looked at the clip. We've looked at the segment. There's no context that changes the meaning of your statements. Why are you bringing up the fact that it's edited down?
So this is what we have to remember about the internet and Twitter and X and all of these platforms. These are not places for nuanced discussion. These are places for reactionary content. Okay? So in regards to male...
Like, you can just hand wave and vaguely signal to the idea of there being nuance, and people will just eat up whatever the fuck insane shit you say. It's...
Suicidal patients, a
so
therapist
ill.
who believes their minds are not malfunctioning and their lives are not worth living would not be beneficial, as the therapist does not attempt to correct or improve their situation. Now, this is where I say this...
Yeah, also, you know, not what reactionary means. He means reactive. Reactionary is generally refers to the political thought, right?
So
So
I disagree 100%. So there are a couple of very, very, very important things to consider here. So let's start with this, okay? I want y'all to really think about... Or actually, we'll get to this in a second. So then... Asmongold decided to react to this. Even back that up. So the number one thing...
So people are mad about this. People are pissed off. And it's like, obviously, he's not saying that they should kill themselves. He's talking about it from their perspective, right? It's like, I haven't seen the context, but like, tell me, am I wrong? That's clearly why. It's like, from their perspective, they think that their life isn't going to get any better. So like, they logically come to this conclusion rather than come to this conclusion through a manifestation of some sort of actual pathology of the mind, like he says. But people don't understand that,
So,
and they're getting pissed.
in the clip, Dr. K is clearly talking from his perspective, and he refers to the conclusion as objective, genuine, and a realization. Okay, he makes it very clear that it's not about their perspective, and at no point does he say it's about their perspective.
Pissed off at him, right? This is crazy. Why live your life is stupid? Well, why not take a huge risk? What do you have to lose? Well, that's again what you have to teach people, right? And that's clearly what the point is. Life's not worth living is bullshit intended to pander to social media audience. No, like, bro, I feel like that sometimes, right? Like, I remember...
So I'm going to pause here for a second. So I want to just... So if we look at something like this, and their lives are not worth living, would not be beneficial, okay? So the first problem that I have with this is, just because...
So did he just play that clip and not say anything?
People, right? And that's clearly what the point is. Life's not worth living is bullshit intended to pander to social media audience. No, like, bro, I feel like that sometimes, right? Like, I remember...
So I'm going to pause here for a second. So I want to just... So if we look at something like this, and their lives are not worth living, would not be beneficial, okay? So the first problem that I have with this is, just because someone doesn't have a malfunction of the mind doesn't mean that we don't try to help them, right? So, like, I don't know how you say, like, just because someone accurately assesses their life is not...
Look, he's saying... What? Look. Nobody's... See, this is my thing, right? This is the exact sort of reframing that I'm talking about. He's saying, doesn't mean we don't try to help them. The idea of trying to help, that's not... That doesn't change the statement that he made, because he said... that you can try to help them, but for most of these people, it's not going to work. That's what he was saying. You might try. You might try because it's your job to try. You might try because it's your job to try, but you have expressed the belief that you think that trying is useless in most cases. You have said that their lives are so fucked that they have come to a genuine, objective realization that there is no way out. So let's hear this. What's he got to say? What's he got to say here?
These are not worth living, would not be beneficial, okay? So the first problem that I have with this is, just because someone doesn't have a malfunction of the mind doesn't mean that we don't try to help them, right? So, like, I don't know how you say, like, just because someone accurately assesses their life is not having a whole lot of value, why do you assume that that means we don't try to help or correct it or improve their situation? That's absolutely what we do. And this is where I want y'all to really understand this. This is what I think is so important to understand. So here is a person, okay? Now,
oh, great.
Let's
Diagram.
look at their life. There are some subjective aspects to life. And this is rife with all kinds of problems, subjective, objective. And let's say that there are objective problems with their life. So actually, forget about subjective problems. I'm going to change this a little bit. So let's say they have a malfunctioning mind. So if someone is suffering and says, my life sucks, okay? And you have a malfunction of the mind. So in the case of clinical depression, one of the key things about mood disorders, like a depressive episode, is that while oftentimes depressive episodes are triggered by negative circumstances, The whole point of the pathology is that this person objectively has lots to live for. So I'm thinking about, so I worked on a particular psychiatric unit called Blake 11 at Massachusetts General Hospital. I was an intern there, and I would have patients who came in and they were married. They had kids who loved them. They had careers. They would go skiing in the wintertime. They even had dogs. So someone comes in and says, I'm suicidal. My family would be better off without me. My kids, like, I know they say they love me, but like they don't realize how shit of a dad they've got. This is what I would call a malfunction of the mind. So this is a situation where you look at it objectively and you say like, and even then, like you could say, argue what is objective, what is subjective. And this is where when I say objective, like basically what I'm referring to is we can look at research on quality of life. And we can take like 1,000 human beings and we can say, okay, what is the quality of life of these people? And then like we can say these people have a good quality of life, these people have a bad quality of life. We have like research on quality of life, okay? We can say this person has a malfunctioning mind. Now so, let's take the case of someone.
So yeah, we get you that. Yeah, that's what objective means. Yes, it means the reality. Yes, yes.
Someone else. Let's say that I am 36 years old. I am a virgin. I have no job.
Yeah, quite exactly. But he's baking in the idea that the quality of life, I mean, it is directly related to life being worth living. When plenty of poor people have low quality of life in terms of like material conditions, like food quality, maybe can't pursue all the hobbies they want to, have to work a lot, shit like that. You can have all these markers, but still have a life that's worth living because you have like family, social connections, time that you get to spend working on maybe like low-cost hobbies or that people have low qualities, or even you can look at like Africa. Look at fucking Africa. Some total shithole country in Africa. Plenty of people there are gonna say, yeah, my life's worth living, even though objectively they have a horrific quality of life. They're still gonna say their life is worth living. Because they have family, because they have friends, because they have things that make, give days meaning. It's such a bizarre analysis.
I live at home. I've never had a romantic relationship. I have nothing to look forward to. In the sense of, like, I'm not going on vacation. I'm not striving for promotion. So when I say, like, no future, I don't mean, like, in an abstract philosophical sense. I mean, like, literally, if you sit down and you talk to this person, you ask them, what are you looking forward to over the next year? And they have nothing. They can't think of a single thing that they're...
See, look, no future. He's not being specific enough here, because he's saying, not in, like, an abstract sense, they have no future. I mean, literally, you sit down and you ask them what you're planning to do, and they've got nothing. Okay. So in an abstract sense, do they have a future? Are you saying that in the abstract sense they do? They can build a future? Or are you saying they can't? It's not clear. He's not being clear there.
Looking forward to. Okay? Now, we have to be super careful here. Because if we say the reason that this person is suicidal is because of these things, which are, I would call them objective aspects of their life, we'll get a little bit into the nuance. Versus the objective aspects of this.
So you can, okay, now you can reformat objective to just mean the material conditions, the facts of their life. You can reformat, we can define objective as relating to those terms, as relating to those characteristics. Sure, I'm fine with that. That does not change the fact that he said it was a realization and genuine. Even if you reframe objective. It does not change what he said. And he has still not addressed the fact that he said most of them can't be helped.
This person's life are okay, this person's life suck. Where is the root of the problem here? Now, this gets complicated, and like I said, we'll get into this because this leads to cognitive biases and emotional changes and all that kind of stuff. We have to be super careful.
Yes, exactly. This is the point, is that these circumstances are going to bring on mental changes that does become mental illness. And now that is a mental illness that has been brought on by circumstance. So to define this person as not mentally ill is retarded.
Because if we assume that this person's
when he's just basically acknowledged that there is something wrong, there is now a mental problem, there is now mental dysfunction happening. He has now defined that, he said that is now happening.
Your life, we'll get a little bit into the nuance. Versus the objective aspects of this person's life are okay, this person's life suck. Where is the root of the problem here? Now, this gets complicated, and like I said, we'll get into this because this leads to cognitive biases and emotional changes and all that kind of stuff. We have to be super careful because if we assume that this person's problem is all in their head and they have a malfunction of their mind and actually they're wrong, we know your life better than you do. You have a lot to...
The part where they're wrong is the part where there's no way of fixing it. That the only answer is suicide, that there's no way of getting out, there's no one that can help. That is the part where they're wrong. Their assessment of their current situation may be totally accurate. It may be fucking horrible. They may genuinely have a shit life. The part where they are obviously going to be wrong, where you should say they are wrong, is in the assessment that there is no future, that there is no way to fix it, there is no way to help. But he's not saying that. He's not saying that. He said the opposite.
To live for, you're just too fucking stupid to understand it. You just need to dig deeper and try harder. These people try way harder than most of us will ever try.
See, look, he's saying they have
you're
tried.
Just too fucking
they have
stupid
tried.
to understand it. You just need to dig deeper and try harder. These people try way harder than most of us will ever try. Honestly, this is my experience. And
I'm sorry, but no, most of them don't. The 36-year-old college dropout who's watching porn and playing video games all day is actually not really trying. No, I'm sorry, they probably really weren't trying, actually. I hate to fucking tell you this. But they actually probably weren't trying. That's probably actually the fucking problem.
My understanding of it. Fucking to be 36 years old and wake up one day and like pull yourself out of bed because I'm fucking happily married and like I've got a 2-year-old. I'm tired, but my life is good. I have a reason to get out of bed. What is way harder is to get out of bed when you have no reason to get out of bed. So this is where like, you know, and we'll get to some of this. Like, why not take a huge, what do you have to lose? What you have to lose is effort. So if you're 36 years old and...
So you kill yourself? Because it's effort to try, you kill yourself.
What is way harder is to get out of bed when you have no reason to get out of bed. So this is where like, you know, and we'll get to some of this. Like, why not take a huge, what do you have to lose? What you have to lose is effort. So if you're 36 years old and you haven't...
I don't get it. I'm losing my mind here. This guy has 2.15 million subscribers for mental health content.
Done anything with your life, what do you have to lose? You have more effort with no gain to lose. That is a huge cost. You have futility in your life. This is what the experiences of these people are. Right? So this is where I don't say like, oh, hey, you're mentally ill. You just, your fucking brain, you don't realize that there's so much to live for. When I say like, I look at these people's lives and I think they objectively look, and this is what I mean by objective. So you call this objective or subjective. I'll give you all a simple example. Right? So this person walks into my office, is 36 years old. And they have had nothing of consequence in their life that they can remember. Maybe they did somewhere, but generally speaking, they kind of dropped out of college. They just started playing a bunch of fucking video games, watching pornography, you know, like developing parasocial relationships with VTubers. And like, this is what their life is.
Sounds like he's winning.
Now, if you ask this person, like, what do you have to look forward to? What has your experience of life been like? Just think about this. If you've lived the majority of your 20s and half of your 30s and you have had nothing to look forward to, why would you logically assume, if you've been trying this shit for like 36 years, why would you logically assume that things are going to get magically better in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years?
Yanna's is going to date me.
Why would you logically assume that? Right? So human beings are really good at pattern recognition. I'm not saying that their lives are not worth fighting for, and I'm not saying, and we'll get to that because I'm against suicide. But what I'm saying is, like, when I say that their lives are objectively...
Oh, brave. Thank you, Dr. K. Thank you for that brave fucking take. Let me make it clear.
What has your experience of life been like? Just think about this. If you've lived the majority of your 20s and half of your 30s and you have had nothing to look forward to, why would you logically assume, if you've been trying this shit for like 36 years, why would you logically assume that things are going to get magically better in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? Why would you logically assume that? right? So human beings are really good at pattern recognition. I'm not saying that their lives are not worth fighting for, and I'm not saying, and we'll get to that because I'm against suicide. But what I'm saying is, like, when I say that their lives are objectively shit, like, this is, you know, they say that. And this, by the way, was something that was taught to me, which is, like, I'll just share this example with y'all. So I was working at Massachusetts General Hospital, and I was working in the emergency room. There's a brilliant nurse practitioner there. And then she would, like...
Oh, yeah. This story about this brilliant nurse practitioner. Go, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
See patients, and she would come to me, and then, you know, we'd, like, talk about it. I'd say, like, okay, what's going on with this person? And then she'd say, like, there's 6 diagnoses in the chart. Conduct disorder, polysubstance use. And if you guys know mental health and you're a mental health professional, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Polysubstance use disorder, conduct disorder, PTSD, bipolar disorder, maybe major depressive disorder.
No, Eric. If he actually was saying that, that would actually completely change the meaning of what he's saying. Is this whole thing just that by objectively, he means subjective from my point of view? No. But he's clarified that by objectively, he is referring to the objective elements of their life, the facts of their life. The fact they've never had a relationship. The fact they don't have a job. The fact they dropped out of college. The fact they have no friends. That's what that's what he's referring to by objective. However, the problem is that the original statement was they have objectively realized there is no way out. Which means, even if you change the meaning of objective there, he's still saying that the facts of their life, the facts of their situation mean that there is not even any attempt to help, any attempt to try would be futile. They should try because some of them it will work for, but for most of them, there is no hope. That is what he was saying. And he has not walked that back. He has added in this extra context to try and make it sound a bit better, but that was what he was saying, and he has not walked that back.
Forget the fact that those are mutually exclusive in ADHD. Those are the 6 diagnoses. But she says, well, I ask her, what's the problem
Canadian?
with this kid? She says he has SLS.
Sorry.
What is SLS? Shit life syndrome. This is a kid that grew up in a traumatic household, was through, like, the group home and orphanage system, abuse, substance use, no good role models, no prospects, got into trouble at school, got put into this IEP. These kids they just never had a chance in life. You can slap as many diagnoses as you want on top of them, which is usually what ends up happening, and then they get medicated all hell. But the problem is that they've just never, like, you know, there's so many community, social, lack of role models, lack of love, lack of support, lack of modeling, lack of emotional mirroring, all this kind of stuff. So, first thing, we have to be super careful, because if we assume that this is a malfunction of the mind, then what we try to do is fix the malfunction of the mind, and we ignore all of this stuff. This, I think, is potentially one of the biggest mistakes that we're making. Okay? So let's take a look at a couple other comments.
But no. That's not what you're saying. That's not what you're saying. That's not the point you've been making.
Never had a chance in life. You can slap as many diagnoses as you want on top of them, which is usually what ends up happening, and then they get medicated all hell. But the problem is that they've just never, like, you know, there's so many community, social, lack of role models, lack of love, lack of support, lack of modeling, lack of emotional mirroring, all this kind of stuff. So, first thing, we have to be super careful, because if we assume that this is a malfunction of the mind, then what we try to do is fix the malfunction of the mind, and we ignore all of this stuff. This, I think, is potentially one of the biggest mistakes that we're making. Okay? So let's take a look at a couple other comments. Okay. Every man has a life worth living. Doom porn deserves scorn and rebuke. So this, I think, is also where we have to, like, take a step back, and we have to decide a couple of things. Okay? So someone says every man has a life worth living. Now,
Dr. K did not go to
one
Harvard.
Of the things that we try
That's
very
not true.
hard
He did a
is
residency at Harvard Medical School. He did not go to Harvard.
This is to do something called empathize. What does that mean? That means that when someone walks into your office and they say, "This is my life," we do our best to meet them where they're at. We do our best. Every man has a life worth living. Doom porn deserves scorn and rebuke. So this, I think, is also where we have to, like, take a step back, and we have to decide a couple of things. Okay? So someone says every man has a life worth living. Now, so one of the things that we try very hard as therapists is to do something called empathize. What does that mean? That means that when someone walks into your office and they say, "This is my life," we do our best to meet them where they're at. We do our best to understand as therapists, and maybe this is wrong, but this is, I think, is fair.
This is fine.
That this person...
This is fine. You should meet people where they're at, sure. That's not what you're doing when you say there is no way out.
Person has lived their life every single day. And I have not lived their life every single day. And that the experiences of my life don't necessarily translate over to them. So if someone says every person's life has value, I agree. But the reason that I agree is because of my life. Because I see that my life has value. Every day I've lived with some value. I've thought that I didn't have value, and now I believe that it has value. I agree that all lives have value. But my point is that when someone walks into your office and they say, this is my experience of the world, I think it is the height of arrogance to say you are wrong and I am right. Because
that's
I haven't
not what's being said. That's not what's being said.
And I'll tell you, we did this for decades.
It's about the possibility of fixing it.
Because women showed up and said,
oh my God,
hey, I'm getting sexually assaulted. And we said, ha ha ha, no, you're not. That is impossible. If you got sexually assaulted, you were asking for it. This is literally the kinds of responses we had. So what was this 2017 Me Too movement about? It was about believe women.
That's a clip.
Hey, I have a crazy idea. When someone says something about their life, how about we meet them where they're at? We're not saying they're 100% right. And there may be cases, I'm not going to get into the Me Too movement and sexual assault and all that kind of stuff. They're absolutely, like, at least in depression and suicidality, there are cognitive distortions and stuff like that. But a good starting point, which I think is like basics of medicine, is like listen to your patients. Hear what they have to say. Try to understand them. This is the foundation of therapy, is the better that I understand someone else's experience, the more that I will be able to help them. And the whole problem, I've heard so many horror stories of people going in and telling their therapist, like, hey, my life sucks. And the therapist is like, no, it doesn't. You just need to see things this way. You just need to do things this way. And that can actually be helpful for some people. Okay?
What is it? Stylist says again about 600 men.
But this is like exactly, in a sense, what I think the problem is. So here's my take. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at a couple of these. I think they're subjectively determining their life isn't worth living, and there are only a few decisions away from feeling otherwise. And this person is kind of saying, okay, like, what do you mean by objectively realizing? What do you mean? These are great. I would love to know more about what qualifies as not worth living. I'm not sure I get enforcing your client's suicidal tendencies as best medical or ethical practice. I agree, which is why I don't do it. Right? So let me be very clear. I am 100% against suicide. It isn't worth living, and there are only a few decisions away from feeling otherwise. And this person is kind of saying, okay, like, what do you mean by objectively living, and there are only a few decisions away from feeling otherwise. And this person is kind of saying, okay, like, what do you mean by objectively realizing? What do you mean? These are great. I would love to know more about what qualifies as not worth living. I'm not sure I get enforcing your client's suicidal tendencies as best medical or ethical practice. I agree, which is why I don't do it. Right? So let me be very clear. I am 100% against suicide. And people...
So what, but what, that's why I don't do it. Okay, so explain that statement. How is that not an accurate representation of that statement?
I even say, like, okay, but what about the situations where someone has a, like, debilitating medical degenerative illness like ALS? And, like, even in those cases, at best, I'm a question mark. So if I had a patient who walked into my office tomorrow and said, hey, I have ALS, I want to kill myself, I would be like, yeah, I can't help you do that. So I've had those kinds of requests, by the way. So I've had patients, like, the weirdest referral I've ever gotten is someone was like, hey, I need a psychiatrist to sign off so that I can go commit medical suicide in Europe. And I was like, I'm not willing to do that. So I'm 100% against suicide. Okay? I've even had people who will be like, but hey, Dr. K, you believe in reincarnation, right? So doesn't it make it okay because I just get a redo? And I'm like, no, bro, I'm still against suicide. Sorry, bro. But here's how I approach this situation.
Anti-made?
So I think somewhere along the way,
shocking.
And this is like, it's Twitter or X or whatever, right? So acknowledging that someone objectively has a shitty life, and this is, I'll tell you, like, literally what I say.
And the point is never it's not that he's advocating suicide. That's not what. Oh my God, fuck off. That's not what's being said. No one's saying he's advocating suicide. The point is that he's stating that the only options are misery or suicide. That's not necessarily advocating suicide. He's making a statement of fact, what he believes to be fact.
And here's the way I think I choose to approach it. So far, my patients seem to be pretty happy with it, as far as I know, right? And that is like, okay, so if your life is objective shit and you have no hope, this is what I say. I say, I can explain to me why. First of all, help me understand how your life is meaningless and is complete crap. Like, I would love to hear what you're actually talking about. And that's when they say these kinds of things. And this is when I say, I hear you. I still don't think suicide is the right answer. If you're feeling dangerous and you're going to hurt yourself, please let me know. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to stop that. And here is why. Because at this point, hundreds of people I have worked with who have been suicidal. 100 people have walked through the door just like you have. And 97 out of 100 over time have been arguably as hopeless as you have, and their lives have gotten better. I hear you that your life is objective shit. Let me help
Okay, so
you.
now, so is he going to acknowledge that he didn't say this initially? Because this is a totally different thing.
And is complete crap. Like, I would love to hear what you're actually talking about. And that's when they say these kinds of things. And this is when I say, I hear you. I still don't think suicide is the right answer. If you're feeling dangerous and you're going to hurt yourself, please let me know. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to stop that. And here is why. Because at this point, hundreds of people I have worked with who have been suicidal. 100 people have walked through the door just like you have. And 97 out of 100 over time have been arguably as hopeless as you have, and their lives have gotten better. I hear
So then
you
they
that
were
your
wrong.
life is objective shit.
So then it wasn't objective, it wasn't a realization, and it wasn't genuine, and there was a way out. So what you said was wrong. So can you acknowledge that you said something that was incorrect?
Let me help you build a life that is worth living. Now, this is very important to understand. This is not me saying, hey, your brain is malfunctioning. You just don't realize that your life is worth living. This is me saying, hey, I'm going to meet you where you're at. If you think your life sucks, let's do something about it. Right? And this is where, like, in a sense, I can't blame these people, right? Because there wasn't context to this clip, this 50-second clip.
What do you mean
Right? So
context?
I
You said
absolutely
there
try
was
to
no
correct or
context.
improve
There
their
is no
situation.
context.
But this also has...
He did not have context. There is no extra context in that fucking podcast.
like, I don't enforce it. Quite the opposite. The other thing that I'll kind of say to them is, hey, like, look, I understand that you have
He just can't own a fuck up. It's crazy. Yeah, he can't. He literally cannot own the fuck up.
hope right now. What I would love to do is carry the hope for both of us. I have hope for you. You're telling me that your life is absolute crap right now. I hear that. Not just right now. You told me that it's been absolute crap for the last 10 years. I think it's completely reasonable for you to be hopeless. I can't imagine living 10 years of your life and waking up and finding hope. I can't imagine how logically I would be able to do that. I totally get where you're coming from. But I have hope for you. And if you're okay with it, I will carry the hope for you and me for 3 months. You don't have to... All I want you to do is show up, try, and get some help. Like, I know you've tried a ton. I know you've worked really, really hard. I can see that you've tried so many different things. I don't think you're at fault. But what I would like to do is help you, because I think the biggest problem in your life is that you haven't received the help that you needed. It's not your fault. You've tried. You've given it a shot, so let me help. And the reason that I choose to hope is because 97 out of 100 people who walk into my office get better. Right? So here's where I'm coming from. And I'm not willing to give up on you yet. And then some of them will say, but what about the 3? You said 97. What if I'm in one of the 3? And this is where we get to the cognitive bias. Oh, that's so interesting. Why would you assume that you would fall into the 3 instead of the 97? Huh. How did your mind jump there? That's so interesting. I wonder if there are other situations in your life where you assume that your things are not going to work out for you. Where did you learn that? How did you discover that if, I don't even know what the right analogy is. It's like,
Wow, this almost sounds like this almost sounds like he's describing a mental illness. It sounds like he's describing a mental illness here, doesn't it? When he's talking about cognitive biases that consistently lead you to feel unjustifiably negative thoughts and carry out actions that impact actions and behaviors that impact your ability to live a happy life. Almost sounds like now he's talking about a mental illness that's brought on by circumstance, and that the idea that framing it as though their life is actually as bad as they think it is kind of retarded. It's kind of retarded because you're baking in this idea that there's no way of fixing it. Oh yeah, this is different because it's men. Sorry, I get it. Yeah. It's like... I think psychology is bullshit, okay? But insofar as psychology isn't bullshit, to me, it's about just categorizing when behaviors are so bad. The best way to use psychology is simply just categorizing clusters of behaviors that are so unlikable or so difficult to get along with in society that they need to, someone's got to do something about them. Now, I don't trust any of the research much past that. I don't really buy into a whole lot of it. I think it's all kind of bullshit. But insofar as it's useful, that's what it's useful for. So for him to sit there and be like, "Oh no, their lives are actually that bad. They don't have a mental illness." It's like, no, this is just so retarded and just so retarded and unhelpful. Just why is it so difficult to say? No, their lives are really fucking bad, and it brings on negative thought patterns that mean they keep themselves in that really fucking bad life. Mental illnesses that make them keep themselves in that really fucking bad life. I don't understand what's so difficult about phrasing like that, but he's so bought into this idea that they're right. No, they're right. No, they're right. Their life is actually bad enough to justify suicide. Well, he doesn't say justify suicide, but he says that the options are abject suicide and misery. They don't have a mental illness. They have an incel disposition.
You know, if everyone is mining up gold, you dig in the earth and you're the one guy who finds shit. That's an interesting perspective. Help me understand that. And then we'll eventually get to the question of, if you believe that you are in the 3% who will fail, what do you think that does for your prospects of success? There's this thing called a nocebo effect, where if you believe you're going to screw up, if you go into a job interview and you think you're going to screw it up, the belief that you are going to screw it up increases your chances of screwing it up. And then we get to self-perpetuating cycles and we can open the door, and that's when the therapy happens. Why do you immediately jump to the 3? And even then, when they say the 3, and this is where I say, yeah.
But it doesn't meet the DSM definition, and psychiatrists are giga alien about that. No, you're wrong. Because he's talking about suicide. He's talking about people that have killed themselves. That's what the statement was about, was people have killed themselves. So his statement is about the fact, he says they have no history or evidence of a mental illness. But that's definitionally wrong. Suicide is evidence of a mental illness. Additionally, you can't posthumously diagnose someone. So if they haven't sought help, of course you can't. They have no mental health diagnosis. If they haven't sought help, they're not going to have a diagnosis. It's mental illness. Yeah, well, yes, but the point that the conversation is about people who have killed themselves, right? Because his initial statement was that for people who kill themselves, for most of the people who killed themselves, there was no hope helping them. Their life was actually bad. Actually, wait, dude, I'm just having a brain blast. He hasn't even walked back the statement. Because he said, out of 100 people that come into my practice wanting help for suicide, 97 of them get better, 3 don't. Okay, his initial statement was not about the 100 people. It was about the 3. It was about the 3. It was of the 3, most of those people, there was no way to help them. Fuck. Dude, how did I let that slip by? When that, yeah. This is the same statistics bullshit he pulls later, actually. This is literally the same shit he pulls. Because he said, of people who killed themselves, you know, most of them you couldn't help. That's what he initially said. That's what he was saying. He wasn't saying about the 100. He wasn't saying people who present with suicidality. He was saying people who kill themselves. Oh my God, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. Yeah, and that they also didn't have a mental illness. Yes. Oh my God.
Like, it's not that those people are uncurable. Let's understand this, right? Let's be nuanced. Let's be specific. It doesn't mean that they can't be helped. It just means that my dumbass was not sufficient to help them. Because, shockingly, I'm just a regular.
Is this about the 3?
Increases your chances of screwing it up. View effects of success. There's this thing called the nocebo effect, where if you believe you're going to screw up, if you go into a job interview and you think you're going to screw it up, the belief that you are going to screw it up increases your chances of screwing it up. And then we get to self-perpetuating cycles and we can open the door, and that's when the therapy happens. Why do you immediately jump to the 3? And even then, when they say the 3, and this is where I say, yeah, like, it's not that those people are uncurable. Let's understand this, right? Let's be nuanced. Let's be specific. It doesn't mean that they can't be helped. It just means that my dumbass was not sufficient to help them. Because, shockingly, I'm just...
I like that. Like he's dropping something. Dropping someone over a balcony.
Just a regular psychiatrist. Right? I'm no miracle worker. I am flawed. I can't help all of my patients. Because as a psychiatrist, We don't have all this shit figured out. And on some days, I don't get 8 hours of sleep, and maybe my neurons are not wiring. That doesn't mean that they are hopeless. Why do you assume that that means they are hopeless instead of I am flawed? So even for those 3 patients who I care about deeply, I just recognize I was not the person to help them. So 100% against suicide. Absolutely.
Okay, so now that is a change. Now he's saying someone could have helped them, just not me. Just not me. And also, there's no way he could have had any culpability or responsibility in the situation. It's just that he wasn't the right person for it.
And we have to be super careful. Because if we assume that the reason that people are suicidal is because they are mentally ill, as opposed to they are not mentally ill and there are actually things in their life that are driving them towards suicide, what that means is we will focus on treating something that may not be the problem. So this is something I've learned as a doctor. Misdiagnosis is the biggest mistake you can make. I think I'm fixing thing A and the problem is B. And right now, what we're seeing is a large increase in suicidal tendencies in men for sure, but also in women. Like proper, true 21st century equality people, we are seeing equalization of mental illness, which is not a good thing. It's a bad thing because everything is going up. So now let's take a look at another reaction. Okay.
Sounds like a fulfillment issue. Yeah, it sounds like if you're in an area. So like, for instance, I believe that people can get to a point where their life is not worth living. But in order for you to think that your life is not worth living, I think you have to have like some kind of mental illness going on. Except for, like I said, in some circumstances, like if you've got extreme failing health, such that you're just like in pain all the time. Like I said, there's some exceptions that I can understand, but for the most part, I don't think. I think it means life's not worth living is a conclusion people arrive at after a lot of thought rather than a malfunctioning brain. I disagree. I don't think that's the case. Something is fucked in your brain then, because there's just not. Humans acclimate. A healthy brain acclimates to an unbelievable amount of stuff. Like even, I've said this before on stream, I think it says yesterday, even people who are like handicapped, like you can lose both your legs, you can become quadriplegic, you can have shut in or locked in syndrome, and even these people's happiness will acclimate surprisingly quickly. So the idea that you've done some rational analysis of your life and like, wow, I need to kill myself. Something is not
spitting.
Okay. So I'm sure at some point, Destin and I, or I hope, will actually have a conversation about this. Because this fucking reacting back and forth is... So, look, so I respect Destiny a lot. I think he's not wrong here, and I disagree. So let's understand a couple of things, right? So let's turn to the data.
Okay, how could you possibly disagree with that?
There's data to the opposite of what I'm saying. So we're going to talk about the flaws in the data. So the first idea is that, okay, like people can have a life that's crappy, but if you're suicidal, there's one exception, which is like debilitating illness.
I think this is where the stats also
correct
happens.
That there are a lot of studies that show that human beings acclimatize to like lower standards. That's true. Like if you lose a limb, you will, and you ask someone, would you rather lose both your hands or die? People will say, I would rather die than lose both of my hands. But then if someone has an accident where they lose both of their hands, heaven forbid, then what you discover is they're like, are you glad you're alive today? They're like, yeah, I discovered that I can still have fun. I think there are a couple of huge disconnections here with some of the things that Destiny's saying. Based on my understanding as a clinician, I don't blame the guy because, he's not a doctor, which doesn't mean that he can't have valid viewpoints. He's actually exceptional at assimilating information without a professional background. I think it's something I respect about him a lot. He's right about some of this stuff. And also, let's look at some more data. I think he's wrong about some of it too. But
entering Glizzy overdrive.
So, this is a study called Suicide in the Absence of Mental Disorder, a review of psychological autopsy studies across countries. Okay. So, we conducted a systematic review of, what is PA? Psychological autopsy studies from 2000 onwards, okay? Up to 66.7% of suicide cases remain without diagnosis in those that only examined Axis 1 disorders. So 14 studies looked at Axis 1 disorders, which means more acute mental illness, not personality disorders. And 66.7% of cases remain without a diagnosis. Approximately 37.1% of suicide cases had no psychiatric condition in research papers that assess personality and Axis 1. So if we start looking at personality disorders like narcissism or sociopathy or things like that, borderline personality disorder, then the number of undiagnosed people drops to 37%. Okay. And then Stephen does a great job of this. He says later on, I don't know exactly where he says it, but he says like, I believe that there are going to be studies which will show no evidence of mental illness, but I think that is a case of undiagnosed mental illness that is really there and causing them to malfunction. Okay. So it's like, when we look at this study, does this mean that this person was not mentally ill or that they were mentally ill and we just didn't pick it up? Okay. So let's just look at another paper. So I think when I was talking about the actual study,
he's got own Destiny here with the studies. I see.
So this is from the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. I think this is a group out of UCLA as like the primary authors here. Okay, so these are like real research articles. Okay, most male suicide decedents had no known mental health conditions. Most. Okay. And more frequently, those without known mental health conditions died by firearm, and many tested positive for alcohol. Adolescents, young adult males, and middle-aged males without known mental health conditions more often had relationship problems, arguments, and or a crisis as a precipitating circumstance than those with known mental health conditions. So this is really important to understand, because what this study suggests is that it's not just that we're missing stuff. It is that we can look at these cases, and what we can find is that prior to suicide, these people had relationship problems, arguments, and or some kind of crisis in their life. Okay? Now I'm going to show you all a paper that counter.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. So let me try and figure out how to explain what I'm thinking here. Yes, of course, undiagnosed people are going to be more likely to have precipitating circumstances to the suicide, because there is going to be some amount of people who don't have a mental health issue and just have a fight while they're drunk or something with their girlfriend and blow their head off or something like that. You know, some heat of the moment issue. There is going to be some amount of people that don't actually have a mental illness and have some precipitating circumstances, and there's going to be more of those people in the undiagnosed camp, obviously, than there are in the diagnosed camp. But this doesn't actually make a compelling rebuttal to what Destiny said, because I'm sure Destiny would agree that there's probably some people who don't have a mental illness but are drunk, have a fight, blow their brains out. Yeah, there's probably some amount of people that do that. And yeah, they're going to be more common if you separate it into diagnosed and undiagnosed. But that doesn't actually counter the point he's making. Okay, right.
There's this, sort of, okay? So, let me see if... Okay, so this is a paper on the epidemiology of suicide and from a psychiatric perspective. I think this really looks at a lot of World Health Organization data.
Well, yeah, and then that brings up the other thing, right? Which is that saying drunk, it's like, okay, yeah, sure. We're not talking about mental illness here, but we are now talking about a form of mental impairment. We are now still talking about reduced agency, clouded judgment, not objective, not genuine. Like, this is it's still undermining his point.
Yeah, the majority of suicides worldwide are related to psychiatric diseases. Okay, so here is another paper that was published in 2018, which concludes that across the globe, like, most of these things seem to be related to psychiatric illness. So we have some papers saying, okay, this is very little, like 2/3 are not psychiatrically ill. We have some papers that say the majority are not psychiatrically ill and they had relationship problems. And then we have some papers saying that, okay, like suicide, like mental illness is a huge risk factor for suicide and maybe associated with suicide. All that stuff is fair, right? So how do we interpret this stuff? So this is where we've got to be super careful. So I want y'all to really understand the way that we interpret these. And I think Destiny did a great job of kind of analyzing this, right? So when we look at a scientific paper and we say, okay, the evidence suggests we do not see any history of mental illness in somewhere between 37 and 66% of people who commit suicide, men who commit suicide. Now, we have to be super careful, because what a lot of people will default to is say, okay, this is undiagnosed mental illness, but that's not actually what the data shows, right? So this is where we can say, like, okay, I believe that fairies are responsible for curing cancer. And then I look at a study that shows there's no evidence of fairies in 66% of cases. And then I say, well, I think that fairies are an important part of curing cancer. And in those 66% of studies, we just didn't detect the fairies. So we have to be super careful there, because what we're actually doing is we are taking a piece of data and we are interpreting it based on our belief system, as opposed to looking what the actual data says. The actual data says there's no evidence of mental illness in somewhere between 37 and 66% of people. Now, to counter that point, just like Destiny points out, we know that the rates of mental illness are undiagnosed, or they're high rates of undiagnosed mental illness. We don't really know what those are, but whatever our estimates of mental illness are, they're certainly worse. So there's a very good argument to make that these people are mentally ill. On balance, I do not think that the rates of mental illness, like undiagnosed mental illness, are super, super high. I tried to find statistics on it. The numbers are somewhere between 40 and 100%, which means that if we're diagnosing 20% of people with depression, what that means is that the real number is somewhere between 30 and 40%. It's not like we're we're not missing like, 9 out of 10 people. We're missing maybe 1 out of 2, and that's sort of a generous estimate. So even if we assume that we're missing 1 out of 2 and we double the rates of detection, right? We're still like talking about a large chunk of the population, somewhere between 20 and 40% of the population that doesn't have a mental illness that's committing suicide. And the other reason that I believe that is because of studies like this where I kind of show.
Okay, so that's the statistics error that is being, or the fuck up, the dishonesty that's being played here that Destiny pointed out when I watched some of it earlier. Because the issue is that he is taking it to be like, you're missing out this portion of the population, 20 to 30% of the population that has no mental illness. And you're saying, well, that means 20 to 30% of the people that kill themselves must have no mental illness. But no, because the number of people that are mentally ill is probably going to, even if you're only missing a small amount of people, it's going to be disproportionate for the amount of people that are killing them, for the people that are killing themselves. It's going to be disproportionate in that pool of people. So even if you were only missing a few people, that could account for the entirety of the suicides. So his point, he's totally misusing the idea of the statistics here. It's a total misuse. He's being so dishonest. I can only assume it's dishonesty because I don't believe that a doctor, a doctor, he's not called Dr. K, so he must have a doctor. A doctor would be this fucking retarded. I just cannot believe it. And yet, not to mention the fact that even if it's in he's talking about the population, it's going to skew for men. It's more undiagnosed in men, right? So yeah, I can only assume it's dishonesty. I'm assuming it's dishonesty. I'm hoping it's not idiocy. Idiocy would be worse, frankly. So I'm giving him credit and saying it's dishonesty. I think that's what he's saying. Yeah, like that seems to be what he's saying.
Showed y'all that if we look at this, like,
but I mean that when he says 60 to 80% of people have mental illnesses, I think that 60 to 80% of people at some point in their life struggle with it. So you can have like a depression that arises from circumstance at some point in your life. I think that's probably the statements being made. Not that 60 to 80% of people have an ongoing mental health issue throughout their life. Obviously, stuff like I think obviously autism is kind of mental illness developmental disorder, but like stuff like I think BPD and bipolar are either you're like born with or super early are like defined, right? So that's like a thing you have to, it's like for the whole fucking life. But it's a different thing. Like a lot of people are gonna have situational anxiety or situational depression that's gonna count as sort of like a mental health illness that they've struggled with, but they're not going to be part of that pool of people that's constantly dealing with it.
If we look at suicide, we can see that there are other precipitating factors that aren't mental illness, which is why people kill themselves. There's data around this, right? So it's not just, so I think here's kind of where I am with this. It is a shocking statistic that in the most alarming studies, 66.7% of people who kill themselves do not have mental illness. That is an alarming statistic. I don't think that the number is actually that high. I think that we're missing a fair amount of mental illness, for sure. No question. Studies, 66.7% of people who kill themselves do not have mental illness. That is an alarming statistic. I don't think that the number is actually that high.
Okay, no. Do not have mental illness. Why does he keep saying it? Why is he saying it in such an irresponsible way? No history of mental illness. No history of mental illness. That's what the studies almost always say, I'm pretty sure. It almost always uses that phrasing. No history of mental illness, no reported mental illness, no diagnosed mental illness. It's not no mental illness. You can't make that statement. You don't know that.
I think that we're missing a fair amount of mental illness, for sure. No question. Now, how much? I don't know. Now we get to a core problem, which is that this is not just like Dr. K saying this, right? So this is also where I should say that my clinical experience about this has been scary because I've worked with these people who I don't think are mentally ill. They just look at their life and they're like, I can't do this anymore. This is not a sustainable way to live life. And then you may say, then why not change it? Because they've tried and failed. They're not willing to make the change. They're unable to make the change. They're powerless to make the change. This is
like, no, he's saying it actually is. They actually can't fix it.
why you believe that you're going to check out, right? And that's where I think we need to help them, which is what I do in my job.
Okay, no.
But we've got to be super careful going back to this basic issue, okay? So when someone comes in...
Like, dude, he talks about this in such an insane way. Bro, if Telly talks, you will get banned if you say stuff like that, because that's very annoying, okay? When it's a very... Yes, the way he's talking's the fucking problem, retard.
And says, my life is shit. What are we saying, right? What's the right move? Do we say to this person comes in, and I have suicidal ideation. Do we assume that 1% of people are malfunction of the mind? Or do we say, okay, like, we're going to not be...
Like, this guy's a psychiatrist who runs one of the biggest mental health channels for young men, essentially. Healthy Gamer GG with 2 million subscribers. This is one of the biggest mental health resources online for young men, basically. He's a psychiatrist, isn't he? I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a different title. But he should not talk. It's an insane way to talk.
Paternalistic therapists. We are going to listen to you. We are going to acknowledge that you know your life better than we do. And if someone shows up and says, all lives have value.
I have never consumed gay fucking mental health content. I can assure you of that. I have never been a Healthy Gamer fan, an erudite fan. Okay? I am not a freak like this. I do not need people online to explain to me how to live my life. I was wondering why I got tagged in my server, and it's Lupo saying he would fuck Finster. That's gross. Okay.
I think that's great. I think it's great that you believe that. Now what I want you to do is, if you're someone who believes this...
How much is concern for the mentally ill and how much is racism? It's 100% racism, obviously. 100%.
And what would it take...
Also, I'm going back to 2 seconds.
For you,
okay?
what would you have to go through to change this belief? What would your experience of life have to be? How bad would your life have to be to change your mind that every man has a life worth living? What kind of shit would you have to go through to throw you off of that? And now what we really need to understand is that this is the experience of people who are suicidal. Instead of assuming that they're weak or broken, let's assume for a moment that their lives are objectively incredibly hard, that their lives are nothing like the lives that we live. Because this is what I've seen. And I'm not the only one. So, there's another... just
these emails that I wrote to my friends a couple years ago. And I remember I showed them one of my colleagues. And I was like, I was thinking about talking about some of this stuff publicly. And I was like, but I'm not ready to yet because I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose my job, at Harvard. An academic position. And he was like, oh, no. If you talk about this, you're not going to just lose your academic position. You're going to lose all of your positions. And so I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So
yeah, got to make strategic moves. I know.
So Abba Atlas also is an awesome content creator. We had a conversation on men's issues like years ago. And that's what the climate was back then. And thankfully, I think the climate is better now. It's challenging stuff. And I think this is the reason, right? So the moment that you start saying stuff like this, people will start interpreting all kinds of weird things. Not weird things. I think they're reasonable. But it's like, so this is where let's understand the dialogue here, because this is important. It's not that if I acknowledge that my client or patient has a life that is not worth living, that doesn't mean I tell them to go kill themselves. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm just going to say this again. It's to say, hey, bro, I understand that you have a life that you think is not worth living. I would like to help you deal with these objective problems. Instead of just assuming that you have a bunch of cognitive bias, which is making you misunderstand what's going on, what I would like to help you do is find a romantic relationship, build a career, build a body that you are not embarrassed about, right? These are the actual goals. And in order to accomplish these three things, in my experience as a clinician, that's when we get to this. Because this stuff interferes with this in a way that they don't understand, right? And this is where, am I being paternalistic? No, I mean, I think there's actually like a skill set of things that people who are in this situation have never had the benefit of learning. And due to issues like trauma and stuff like that, they have so many things going against them, they just have no ability to start, because that's not how, I mean, human beings don't really pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Should every suicidal person transition before they off themselves?
Like,
oh my god,
humans
Doobie,
who are successful,
bro,
are successful
I
because
just
they get
fucking was getting better. Oh my.
And at the beginning of
try everything, right? Could transitioning have saved her?
at the top of the list is like parenting. Healthy parenting is such a huge advantage in life. And what is healthy parenting? Healthy parenting is help. The most important help that you will ever receive in your life is from your parents. And if you did not get that help, you have such a disadvantage. But that doesn't mean that the problem is in your head. That means that you may actually have a life that is quite crappy. That doesn't mean that you should kill yourself. It just means we need to do a better job of helping you. So let's look at some other papers. Okay. This one we'll skip for now.
He kind of walked it back, go back 5 minutes. Well, he's kind of been walking it back the whole time, but he hasn't like.
So this is kind of interesting. So a couple years ago, we had someone come up with this concept of diseases of despair.
Less than a minute.
So what we did is we looked at. Let me see if this is the paper. No, we'll get to this. Let me find this. I want to find the one with the diagram. Do you have the diagram? No, you don't have the diagram. Do you have the diagram? Where's the diagram? Here we go. This paper.
It keeps flicking backwards and forwards. It's just like fucking AIDS.
So, we started to realize something. We saw some disturbing trends, okay? So, for example, deaths from diseases of despair in Britain, comparing suicide, alcohol-related, and drug-related mortality for birth cohorts in Scotland, England, Wales, and selected cities. So a couple of people noticed something, and they noticed something kind of scary. Okay, so I'll show you. So this is a trends in the diagnosis of diseases of despair in the United States between 2009 and 2018. Y'all ready? Ready to get wrecked? We'll talk about what diseases of despair are. 515,830 participants received a despair diagnosis, 58% male, median 36 years. From 2009 to 2018, the prevalence of alcohol-related, substance-related, and suicide-related diagnoses respectively increased by 37%, 94%, and 170%.
So he's going to prescribe you with some pussy and TRT.
5 to 74 had the largest increase in alcohol, substance-related diagnoses. Hey, let's try to be a little bit kinder to the boomers. Can we do that, please? Can we? I know some of them are not nice to us, but can we please be kind to the boomers? And here's y'all ready? Y'all ready? Internet generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, ages less than 18 had the largest increase in suicide-related diagnoses, 287%. The odds ratio for men is 1.49, which means that 1.5 times as likely, or 50% more likely. Okay? And then there's some stuff about the Affordable Care Act. So, like, this is scary, right? And this is, by the way, is related to diagnosis. This is not a study looking at people who kill themselves who don't have a diagnosis. But what does this mean? Diseases of despair. So here's the other, like, crazy thing, which if you look at this research, like, here's what you begin to see. We're going to talk about addiction and suicide for a hot second. So in my experience, there are two roots.
It's a crazy, wacky thing
addiction.
about suicide, guys.
Number one, you have an addiction. Number two, you are slow playing suicidality. So now it sounds kind of crazy.
I love pop sci.
But let's understand this. See, when you're suicidal, you've given up on life. Life isn't worth living. So what do you do? Right? In the worst cases that we want to try to prevent, you kill yourself. But you don't have to kill yourself fast. The other thing you can do is get an addiction. And as I've worked with more and more people with addiction, what I've started to realize is this is a slow suicide. My life is empty. I have nothing to look forward to. So what am I going to do today? Let me go ahead and fuck the world and fuck my future and fuck everything around me. I'm going to get high. I'm going to jerk off. I'm going to watch porn. I'm going to play video games because life has nothing to offer. So I'm just going to indulge in this dopaminergic spurt.
What the fuck?
Addiction diagnoses, I think in like, I want to say 30% ballpark. Honestly, the number is probably higher. These people have given up on life and they're just extracting whatever they can from this biological sack while they're alive. Honestly, that's been my experience. And this is what the diseases of despair tell us. So a group of clinicians realized something really interesting, which is that there's a group of people who seem to be despairing in life. These are people who, it's not quite depression. So this is not like a neurochemistry imbalance in the brain that is triggering all this. There are groups of people. So if you look at research in the UK, Fishing villages in the UK are notorious for this. The economy sucks. These are oftentimes young men who are given these attitudes of independence and being like, what makes a good man? A good man provides. And when the economic situation that you live in allows you to no longer provide, you can no longer be a good man. And what do? You turn to alcohol and other kinds of things. That's why they look at, if you look at the diseases of despair, there's a reason why they look at these particular diagnoses. They're not looking at like generalized anxiety disorder or OCD. There is a different kind of construct, which is when people genuinely have a life that is crappy with very little opportunity, we see a certain psychiatric manifestation. Okay? So I'm going to just run through like a sample example of like what this conceptual model of diseases of despair. This is a fantastic article, by the way. So let's look at where this starts. Like, so here's the key thing to understand. Mental health outcomes is at the end. This is the terminal event. This is not the cause. This is the outcome. Okay? So we have proximal life stressors like social rejection, loss of status, economic hardship, loss of purpose, life events, low resource environment, lack of stable employment, social network. This is the actual start. Protestant work ethic, I guess, is associated with it. Self-reliance and independence, masculine culture. Oh, fuck me. You're telling me that on the flowchart of mental illness is masculine culture and societal expectations? Fuck me. Historical events, childhood adversity, economic challenges, suicide contagion in media. And then we get to the person. This is stuff that is completely outside of our control. Thoughts. No one cares about me or will help me. The system/others have betrayed me. Nothing will ever get better. I should be able to fix this. Other people don't understand me. I'm broken. I'm helpless. I'm weak. I'm a bad person. Okay? Now, this is where we can say, okay, doesn't this mean that this person is mentally ill? Sadly, I don't know. Sadly, I think the reason that a lot of people believe this is because they're conditioned to believe this, because they've been taught this in some way. Now, oftentimes they qualify as a mental illness, but like it's really sad, but this is not a malfunction of the brain. This is programming. Is it mental illness because it impairs their function? Absolutely. But when you have a child who's raised in traumatic circumstances, childhood adversity, abuse of parents, this is the way that they see the world, and they're not wrong. This is what happens when you get traumatized. You develop survival mechanisms which become maladaptive later. We have a whole guide coming out in maybe like a month or two about this. Right? And so then there's emotions, and then we get to some of this stuff toward belongingness, perceived burdensomeness, which is really scary, okay? So I want y'all to understand these two. We'll go into more detail in a second. So when we look at theories of suicidality, what we find is that there are a couple of really damning things that really lead towards suicidality. And mental illness is absolutely a huge risk factor. But what researchers have actually done is they've tunneled down and looked at the people. Forget about the diagnosis for a second. What actually happens in this person's life? Actually. And what they discover is there are two things. One is perceived burdensomeness, and the second is thwarted belongingness.
So I actually had to step away for I'm going to run this
when
back.
You get traumatized. Way that mental illness. But like it's really sad, but this is not a malfunction of the brain. This is programming. Is it mental illness because it impairs their function? Absolutely. But when you have a child who's raised in traumatic circumstances, childhood adversity, abuse of parents, this is the way that they see the world, and they're not wrong. This is what happens when you get traumatized. You develop survival mechanisms which become maladaptive later. We have a whole guide coming out in maybe like a month or two about this. Right? And so then there's emotions, and then we get to some of this stuff toward belongingness, perceived burdensomeness, which is really scary, okay? So I want y'all to understand these two. We'll go into more detail in a second. So when we look at theories of suicidality, what we find is that there are a couple of really damning things that really lead towards suicidality. And mental illness is absolutely a huge risk factor. But what researchers have actually done is they've tunneled down and looked at the people. Forget about the diagnosis for a second. What actually happens in this person's life? And what they discover is there are two things. One is perceived burdensomeness, and the second is thwarted belongingness. Now, what do these mean?
Okay, this is just the exact same thing you spoke about before. I mean, I kind of want to speed through this. Let's turn the speed up on this. Let's try and get through this. I want to get on. We will watch the Destiny reaction.
This means
I think we've addressed basically the whole cope.
First of all, I'm a burden to those around.
If we just could go through studies, we might turn it off.
It's not clear how, I don't know how you objectively measure burden. But these people go through life, or at some point they start to believe that like,
it seems
I'm
like
more
he's
of a
just
burden
doing like
than
boilerplate suicide advice now. So I'm not too interested.
I help. I don't contribute anything. I'm just a taker. And the other one that's really devastating, which I think we see a lot of now, this one I think is getting worse, is thwarted belongingness. This is where people try to belong. I come to a group of people and I say, hey, can I hang out with you? And everyone says, ew, no. And this is where you're like, hey, I'm a human being. I'm trying to connect with y'all. And people are like, thank you, but no thank you. And in a sense, this is reasonable, right? Because I mean, I'll hear this a lot, especially in terms of gender dynamics. And everyone's like, I'm not responsible for fixing this other person's problem. It's not my responsibility to be this person's friend. It's not my responsibility to include this person. It's their responsibility to fix themselves, find their own things. I'm not responsible for another human being. This is the value system that we live in today, in the West at least. And that's reasonable, right? Like, I'm not responsible for some random person on the street. But then we're still left with the problem of, if you're not responsible and I'm not responsible, and this person isn't responsible and this person isn't responsible, then who is responsible? So what I see is a group of people, and this is happening a lot.
Well, you're kind of responsible, bro.
I see it more in minority women and frankly women who
you can't sign up for it when you
adhere or don't have a biology to adhere to standard beauty standards. Some of the loneliest women. And what happens is, like, these people don't know how to connect, right? Oftentimes from a young age, they're bullied. Technology enters the picture. We don't know how to end. Like, we don't have social spaces anymore. We're spending all of our time on Discord. And then, like, once you're 29 years old and you've never been in a relationship and you don't quite know how to dress, when people look at you, what do they see? They see a creep. A creep is the most devastating label you can get. Because what does it mean to be a creep? Does it mean that you did something wrong? No. Does it mean that you're bad in some way? Like, did you actually do something? Are you a thief? No. Are you harmful? No. You're a creep. What does that mean? It means that I don't want to spend time with you, but I don't have a very clear reason. That's why we use the word creep, right? So if someone is like a rapist, that makes sense. They're a rapist. That's why I don't want to spend. Someone's a thief, we understand. If someone is a League of Legends player, we understand why no one wants to spend time with them. Okay? But creep is like a word that we apply to this, and like, what a damning diagnosis, because what do you do about that? Like, you don't have social skills, now you get ostracized, now how are you supposed to get them? And this is where we have another huge problem. So if we look at, show you another quick paper. I jumped ahead. There's another problem here. This is a paper called Masculinity and Help Seeking Among Men with Depression, a qualitative study. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so like, the other problem that we have is that as men, we don't know how to ask for help. And that's because we're raised with these masculine norms of independence, okay? And as we get raised with these norms of independence, sorry for the long comment. I'll take a dig at a couple other games before we're done, okay? So we as men are not taught how to ask for help. And so there's like data that shows that women are taught how to ask for help. We'll show that a little bit later, because there's a second point to it. So I think another huge problem that we have is, if you're a man today, like, you're sort of taught that you're supposed to be independent, right? And this is where a lot of people will say, like, oh, but like men, you know, when we talk about these societal norms, there's like a trend to say, like, no, like, I'm not like that, right? So we say, like, okay, men should be allowed to, like, a man expressing your emotions is absolutely okay. Like, men should be allowed to express their emotions. Really? Which ones? Men can cry. Oh, interesting. What if I have other emotions? What if I feel angry? Am I allowed to express that as a man? And this is where I think Destiny kind of reacts to this.
Not towards a woman.
So we as men are conditioned to express anger and feel anger. It's the only thing, okay? We kind of like, we talked about this on Diary of CEO a little bit, and Destiny reacted to it. But basically, I was kind of pointing out that, you know, if you're getting bullied, what are you supposed to do as a dude? You're supposed to fight back, right? And like, what we're supposed to do is get pissed. And you guys can watch any movie that has a male protagonist. I will guarantee you, I guess I can't guarantee, 99% confidence, I don't even watch movies anymore, that at some point the man will get angry in a righteous and positive way. And this will be a turning point in the movie, right? You'll watch a movie like Taken, where, spoiler alert, it's about someone whose daughter gets abducted. And what does the man do? The man does what he's supposed to do, which is get pissed. And everyone is like, this is what a man should be. I want a dad like Liam Neeson. You can look at anything. And then, like, now we have this, like, very, very contrived vulnerability of, like, oh yeah, like, it's okay for men to cry, but there's so many when they cry. Like, they have such big muscles when they cry, right? They don't show, like, the snot and the vomit and the dejection and the self-hatred and the self-loathing. They don't show the crying for hours and hours and hours. It's like 5 minutes, and then there's a pat on the back, and then there's like positive anger, and then we're gonna go fix our lives. Let's go be men about it, and then we're gonna have big dicks at the end of all that. So what happens, and this is such a common experience that I see in relationships, is that women are conditioned that it's okay to cry. And by the way, women get fucked by not being able to express anger as well, okay? So it's not like, just because men have these challenges does not mean that women don't have challenges. And in fact, when it comes to anger, women especially are punished for it. So we're punished less as men. It's the only tool we're taught. But if you're a woman and you get angry, especially in some places like the workplace, you'll be judged so harshly. Okay? But this is what happens. We're only taught to express anger. And then what happens is we started to demonize anger in men, right? It's testosterone. They're fundamentally violent. These creatures cannot be trusted. All men are bad. Men cannot be trusted. And what is it that triggers these? It's expressions of anger. So we're allowed to, like, sort of express our emotions, but they have to be right emotions. And in this way, now we have entered the lot of women. Because for the last 200 years, this has been true of women. Women are allowed to only express a slice of emotions, and men are only allowed to express a slice of emotions. And so, like, this is a kind of thing where we have to be independent. We express anger, we get ostracized, there's a sense of thwarted belongingness. And then what we end up with is we get called creeps, and then the worst thing is that we don't know how to ask for help. We're not taught how to ask for help. In fact, we're taught the opposite. And so then what ends up happening is that we don't know where to go. But we certainly know that there's one group of people on the internet who understands our plight. Right? Because the rest of the internet says, oh yeah, you're a man, you're privileged, everything's Gucci for you. You don't understand how good you have it. Stupid me. I didn't understand how good I had it. Right? And sometimes that's true. Sometimes you do have deeply narcissistic people who have no idea how good they have it. Maybe I'm one of them. Who knows? And so the one refuge that they have is the alpha males, the red pillars, and the incels. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is toxic masculinity. These people have nowhere else to go. They tried to join you, and you kicked them out. So what do? Anytime you ostracize a group of people, they're going to form their own community. And so if you guys have a problem with toxic masculinity, like, how about you be nicer to dudes so that you don't have to shut them all out, and then they're going to congregate, and then it'll get radicalized.
Discord.gg/Kuihman.
And then the other problem is these people don't know how to ask for help. And so instead, the other real challenge here, and I don't blame people for disliking them, because the way in which they approach other people is so fucking toxic. Right? They're like, oh, women are blah, 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 blah. Like, I deserve this, and I'm entitled to this. And like, they exhibit behaviors and use dialogue that is so damn polemic, polarizing, antagonizing. And then once they piss us off, we're trying to be nice to them, and then they start opening up this can of worms with this like litany of like red pill, whatever the fuck, sexual marketplace value and other kinds of pseudoscience mating bullshit that these people have never read a scientific paper. Right? Maybe they have. I don't know. Like they have all these like ideas.
Unlike all those highly tested and proven theories in psychology.
Like the original person was like, this is not correct. The original researcher coined the terms. And then they say things that make us not want to. It's so hard. And we're not taught
replication,
how to ask for help. Right? How do you ask for help? You can point out what your deficiency is. You can point out that you're striving for something, and then you can ask for help. Right? So this is stuff that I literally teach my patients.
Like
I noticed that I'm not very good at making friends. I would love to be like a better human being and a member of a community and contribute to like the people around me. Can you please help me strengthen my relationships? That's the thing. Point out a flaw that you have. Pick a goal that you want to strive towards, and then ask for help. Hey, I noticed a deficiency. This is where I want to go. Can you help me? 1, 2, 3. Because the best way to ask for help. I don't know that scientifically. I looked at like meta-analysis on different methods of help seeking. Right, but we're not taught this. So someone struggles like they don't know what to do. They get judged as a creep. They have fewer economic opportunities, and we're gonna get. I have other ones. Hold on. I have more papers. I'm not done with the papers. Give me a second. Okay. I'm gonna pause here. So I'm gonna ask y'all. Okay. What do y'all want from me? We've got 45 minutes left. So if y'all want, I will talk to you about my take on the pathogenesis and how to approach suicidality in men. It's not that I dislike women, it's that there are gender-specific things. I'm actually actively working on 2 lectures right now. One is ADHD for women, second is autism in women. So I think there are gender-specific manifestations of mental illness which need to be addressed. It just takes me a little bit longer to do the stuff on women because I'm not a woman, which means that I have to do like more research because I don't want to be paternalistic, right? So I have to it takes me twice as long to prepare a lecture for women as it does to prepare a lecture for men because I have 41 years of experience being a dude. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about what I've talked about so far? Yeah, so I'm working on it, Rosalie. Then be a woman, I'm working on that too. Okay. All right, so. Okay, so. All right, do you guys want to talk more about male suicidality? Do y'all have questions or like what? I mean, I see feet pics and OnlyFans. I have no idea how to interpret that, but that's not going to happen today because we're talking about the importance of male suicide.
Felt like a Dora moment.
I'm the prize chat. Okay.
Guys, we are kind of just watching this to kill time right now. I'm going to move on to the Destiny stuff soon.
I don't know who asked that. Okay, great.
Smoke
not great, but we're going to address that, right? Okay. All right, let's start by looking at a paper. This is a fantastic paper. Exploring the psychology of suicidal ideation,
the Destiny reaction to Dr. K's reaction to Destiny.
So, if we look at theoretical models for suicidal behavior, this is something that we're going to be talking about. I'm going to show you all the actual model, and then I'll talk you all through it, okay? So thwarted belongingness is I'm trying to connect with other people, and I'm alone. And perceived burdenness, I'm a burden. And then capability of suicide, and then desire for suicide, and then this is kind of the Venn diagram. And if you fit all these things, this is
I don't drink black coffee, no.
So the other thing to kind of think about is if we look at how someone ends up committing suicide, what we see is that it's way more complicated than a mental illness. So we have what's called pre-motivational phase, the background factors and triggering events. So this is the way that you were raised, the way that you see the world. And then we have motivation and volition. So let's understand the difference between motivation and volition. Motivation is what I want, right? It is my drive. Volition is my actions. And so what we tend to see is that over time, what will happen for people who are suicidal, and I'm going to sort of refer to men sometimes and just suicidal people sometimes. Different papers are looking at different things. Okay? So what tends to happen is we have a sense of entrapment. So I'll give you all kind of like, and I think it's internal entrapment. Hold on, make sure I have this right. Internal entrapment.
Black coffee, just try hard.
So what tends to happen is we start off with like kind of this unfortunate situation, which we'll get into. Then what happens is we feel trapped. And more often we feel trapped by our internal circumstances more so than our external circumstances. And we'll talk a little bit about what it means to be trapped. But what it means to be trapped is basically that your internal environment is not something that you can get away from. So every day becomes suffering, every day becomes hopeless, every day there's a negative space within you that you cannot act to change. This is a very common experience. A very powerful variable is this experience of like, I can't change the way that I feel. And then what happens is we have something called volitional factors. So this is what we focus on a lot as clinicians. So we focus on things like access to suicidal means. So we try to remove guns from the household. We try to like make it hard for people to commit suicide because oftentimes suicidal behavior is impulsive. So it's very common. I want to say like 90% of people decide to kill themselves within 1 hour of doing it. I could be wrong on the specific statistics. I think 50% make a decision within 5 minutes, and then like it's 80 to 90% or within 1 hour. So the sort of idea that we have from the media that everyone like puts their affairs in order is probably not correct. There's some awesome research by Matt Nock, also Maltzberger. These are 2 excellent suicide researchers. Strongly recommend you check out their work. So what we kind of see from this theory of suicide is that it's kind of like this stretch of like stuff that kind of gets put together. And as we talk about men, I'm going to focus on men for a little bit because I think it's relevant. Let's understand how this happens.
The stream is actually called Let's Talk About Male Suicide.
What we start to realize is I'm a dude. And as a good man, I'm supposed to do certain things. I'm supposed to be independent. Right? I'm supposed to be self-sufficient. I'm supposed to be capable. I'm supposed to be strong. Right? This is what it means to be a man. I'm supposed to take care of others. There's also another really interesting variable here. I'm supposed to be able to tolerate pain. So this is a really interesting gender-specific suicidal manifestation. So people have been asking themselves for a while, why do men kill themselves at 4 times? Why do, for every 1 woman who kills herself, 4 men kill themselves? Why? So one of the interesting hypotheses is that as men, we are taught to tolerate pain. And if you ask people what keeps you from killing yourself, oftentimes people will say, I'm afraid of the pain. So if you look at a protective factor against suicide, it's pain. So since I'm such a wuss and I'm afraid of pain, I'm not going to kill myself. But literally there are studies that explore this, right? I don't know how conclusively they show it. That basically as men get better and better at tolerating punishment, right? Because it's always like, you know, if your family gets attacked by a tiger, it's not women and children to the front, it's men to the front, right? Like literally, like when it comes to military conscription and stuff like that, it's like we send men into war to die. Like we're expected to do this. We're expected to experience pain and suffering and whatever. I'm not going to get into the biological, evolutionary whatever of that and whether that's good or bad or I don't know. It's beyond my area of expertise. But what we do know is that men are taught to take punishment. And since we're good at taking punishment, it's easier for us to kill ourselves because we're not afraid of the pain. It's like the pain of death ain't nothing compared to the pain of life. Okay? So now this creates other kinds of problems. So we also have a couple of other things. One is that we are alexithymic. Okay? And this means that we are unaware of our internal emotional state. And then the other thing that we've got going for us is a combination of these two things. Since we don't manage our emotions, we don't ask for help, we don't do any of that stuff, then we've got this pile of emotions. And we also tend to use substances and addictions to treat them. This is what men do, right? Remember this? The diseases of despair? Let's take a look. 37, 94% alcohol-related and substance use-related diagnoses. 55% were the largest increase in alcohol and substance-related diagnoses. Holy Jesus. 172% increase in substance-related diagnoses between the ages of 55 and 74. That's because the boomers, this is ageism, so I'm going to rephrase, but in a more factual way, I was about to say, the boomers don't believe in emotions. No, so practically what that is that the boomer generation was not taught EQ skills, even at the level that we're taught today. So they struggle more with emotions than we do because it was like, you think they're bad with us about emotional validation? You should see their parents. Their parents were way worse than they are. Like the boomer generation has done an awesome job in many ways. I know it's like, oh my God, this is going to get me canceled. But like they had it rough too. They had some things that were really good, like unprecedented economic growth. Okay? But they struggle too. All right? And for the record, I don't think it helps to crap on any group of people. Like it just doesn't help us be more compassionate. Like we're all in this together. The nicer we are to the boomers, hopefully the nicer they'll be to us. We should all be nice to each other. We're all in this together. Like life is not a zero-sum game where in order for me to win, you have to lose. It's like a fucking game of Dota where if you int and run down mid, you ruin things for yourself and you ruin things for your teammate. Like we're in this together. Okay? So what does this create? So this creates like a problem. Because if you're a dude and you have a good life, then things are actually pretty good. Because you may not need the help as much. You have some advantages of a patriarchal society. I, as a medical student, got mistaken as a doctor. My female colleagues, when they were doctors, got mistaken for nurses. Like, there are some advantages to being a man. But what I tend to find is that these advantages are really, really, like, capitalized on by men who have good lives. So men who have the opportunity for higher education. Fuck-ups, like myself. Like, if my parents were poor, I would not be here today. The only reason that I'm here today is when I failed out of college, I had someone who was there to pay my rent. I had someone who could send me to India and study yoga and meditation. I had someone to help me financially support myself in medical school. And if they hadn't helped support me through medical school and my wife helped support me through medical school, then I would be so racked up in loans that I would have never been able to start Healthy Gamer. Right? So, like, I am born of privilege. And I'm grateful for that. And I think those of us that are born for privilege should try to do something good in the world in what capacity we have. And I would love it if other people who are privileged didn't wait till they were dead to do their charity. Right? Like, we need your help now, for those of y'all that are very, very capable of helping. And I get that it's like an awesome charitable donation in your will. Leave your money to good organizations. Like, I'm grateful for that. But, like, you know, if you really want to be nice, can you do it while you're alive? Because in the 30 years that you're still going to be here, like, people need help too. Anyway, the challenge is that if you have a bad life, it's very hard for men to recover. And that's because we're supposed to be independent. So, no help. Okay? We don't know what we're feeling emotionally. And so without emotional awareness and emotional healing, these emotions negatively impact us. So for example, when I feel ashamed, what is the purpose of shame? The purpose of shame is to enact corrective behavior. So if I feel ashamed for not having money, so I have very little money, right? So this is the kind of thing where like what I'm supposed to do is like work hard and get a job and pull yourself up by bootstraps, son. Come on, boy. Bootstrap time. Let's go. Come on. But this only works if I live in an environment that has economic opportunity. And this is why we see diseases of despair, like literally like in like Wales and Scotland and places like this. Because in these situations, like you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps as much as you want to. There's no up. There's no up. Nowhere to go. Like these are like fishing villages that no longer have fishing. It's like a huge problem in the UK. Okay? And so then we don't know, like, we don't talk to people. We don't know how to ask for help. And then what we end up doing is self-medicate.
What's a huge problem in the UK?
Like,
what was
what
that?
I'm supposed to do is, like, work hard and get a job and pull yourself up by bootstraps, son. Come on, boy. Bootstrap time. Let's go. Come on. But this only works if I live in an environment that has economic opportunity. And this is why we see diseases of despair, like, literally, like, in, like, Wales and Scotland and places like this. Because in these situations, like, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps as much as you want to. There's no up. There's no up. Nowhere to go. Like, these are, like, fishing villages that no longer have fishing. It's, like, a huge problem in the UK. Okay? And so then we don't...
Okay, so there's like some kind of truth to that. Kind of. The thing is that you can escape that like pretty easily if you really want to. Because all you need to do is get, you literally need to get enough money to be, there is ways up for the Welsh and Scottish, okay? It's not that bad. Look. The issue with the Welsh and Scottish is genetic. Stop. I need to not make jokes about intrinsic characteristics like that. It's really bad. It's really bad. Okay. You can easily get out of that, really, if you just get enough money to get to like job interviews and shit outside of a seaside town, right? There are hostels and shit everywhere in the UK. You can go fucking stay somewhere if you need to work for like fucking like 10 quid a night or some shit. It's not Like, you can do this shit. It's not that fucking difficult. If you're born in a situation where you're in a seaside town, you're actually probably relatively privileged. Like, even if it is a fucking absolute shithole, even if it is like dead as fuck. Classic train spotting quote in chat. Okay, well, Isle of Man, that's a whole different issue. It's Sips, isn't it? Lives in Jersey. Yeah. But I mean, he lives there by choice, I think.
We don't know, like, we don't talk to people. We don't know how to ask for help. And then what we end up doing is self-medicating.
It's like, it's just not impossible.
Right, and this is where we sort of end up with, like, slow suicide, which is addiction. And what do I base that on? I'm kind of clustering it into diseases of despair. If you look at the research on diseases of despair, what you discover is that there's a common element that leads to substance use and suicide. That's why we cluster them, because there's a shared...
Yeah, exactly right. This is the thing. I used to live in Weston-super-Mare, very depressing place, but like relatively safe and not totally devoid of job opportunities. Exactly, like even in these shitholes, you can get a job at Tesco, you get a job at Asda, a job at Lidl, you can get a job at the Offie. Like, you're at... Yeah, that is a real town name. But yeah, even in these shithole seaside towns in the UK, you absolutely can still find shit to do, find jobs, find ways to work your way out, find ways to escape the shithole seaside town. Move into a town with, like, transport links to a big city or something. It's not impossible. You're not in a completely fucked situation. It's just, I don't know, man. League of Gentlemen was a documentary, and if you've ever been to small seaside towns in England, you will know that. You will know that.
Okay. And then what ends up happening is, like, we're kind of stuck. So now what happens is that I'm here, and then I have, remember this is my objective versus my malfunction. I can't find one of the papers I was looking for. Maybe it's this one. This isn't the one I'm looking for. I will find it. So here's what we kind of know. So now what we've got,
I'm just so done with this, but I'm not ready to
now we get back to this thing, right? So now we have a community whose objective life is not very good. So they have very little in the way of relationships. They have very little in the way of prospects. They have very little in the way of romance. Right? And so one person may have, like, one of these three. Like, so people will have some amount of this. And then what happens is this over time creates cognitive distortions. Absolutely. And this leads to mental illness. Okay? So we kind of go look at our diseases of despair diagram. Right? So then we get to this region. So this is like the circumstances, and then we start to see all these problems within us. And then this results in mental illness, substance use disorders, depression, suicidal ideation. Okay? Now, this is where, when Destiny says, like, yeah, I think at some point, like, even if their lives are objectively bad, they become mentally ill. And he's not wrong. I personally don't agree with that, but I think it's a completely defensible position. Now, the challenge is that when things become mental illness, the antidote is therapy or medical treatment, which I'm in favor of. But here's what I honestly feel. So if you're a therapist who's alive today, this is the reason I started helping.
Oh, no, here we go. Okay.
So people would come into my office, and they'd say, like, I'm depressed. And I'd say, why are you depressed? They're like, I've got no job, I've got no girlfriend, I play video games all day. And I was like, you know what, bro, that sounds like a pretty depressing life, right? I would be depressed too. And then the more that I started helping people, the more that I started to realize that we as therapists are here to try to help people with their cognitive biases, the malfunctions of their mind, but so many of their problems are outside of the office. So many of their problems are actually bad things in their life, not malfunctions up here. And so what it feels like to me as a therapist, I'll just give you all an analogy. So, like, there's like the king or the queen. And the king or the queen has, like, the queen's guard or the king's guard. So you have these, like, elite soldiers, small number, 20 of them, and we're here to protect the king. We're the last line of defense. And what it feels like to be a therapist today is to be the king's guard and have no other soldiers ahead of you. There are huge macro level forces of people who are unemployed or underemployed, inflation, 50% of people under the age of 30 are living at home. We have toxic workplaces. We have all kinds of, like, problems. We've got social media and video games and pornography, and there's all this tide of crap that we can't hold at bay. These are the macro forces, which there are plenty of research studies about. If you guys want to see them, I can show them to you later. And then what we are as therapists, we're like the king's guard. We're like the last line of defense. It's like, if you're suicidal today, we're going to send you to the emergency room, and we're going to do really intensive stuff. But we as a society are not fixing all of the stuff that got you here. And so therapy is incredibly important. We do a noble job, but holy shit, are we outgunned? We are so outgunned. I trained for 8 years to become a psychiatrist. Right? That's like king's guard material right there. 8 years of training. But when I look at the majority of people who walk into my office, more economic opportunity. Having other humans in your life. Like, I can help you with your cognitive distortions. I cannot make up for the deficiency of hugs from the last 10 years of your life. A loneliness epidemic is going on right now. Something is wrong with our society. As we become more and more independent, we've stopped taking responsibility for each other as human beings. I can't fix that as a psychiatrist. I can do a lot. I can help you with your cognitive distortions. I'm going to treat whatever malfunctions you are, and we do an awesome job. We're all fucking burned out.
Supposed to help them, yeah, the life.
But if you really look at some of these things, like I find paper, there's one really good diagram that really illustrates how these macroeconomic forces that then cascade down into an
It's like so different. It's so not the point that was being made. I'm just getting more and more pissed off with this. I'll let it run until I'm ready to do this next segment.
And we can do a lot, but like really, what we're seeing is a very tight correlation between the worsening of economic conditions and the worsening of mental illness. Because when a human being doesn't have a life that's worth living, it's easy to become suicidal. And so what should you do about it? So the first thing, get therapy. Seek help. Right? So I say this as someone who made a video that went viral about why therapy sucks for men. I still think y'all should get therapy. I'm a therapist. I think it's great. I'm an advocate for it. And it is insufficient. But that's where we're going to start, okay? So here's why. A couple of things. So if you're a man who is suicidal today, the reason that I think you should not give up is because chances are you have not received the help that you need. And the life that you're living today is basically you're playing an MMORPG, but offline and by yourself. This is content that was designed as a 40-man raid, but you're not connected to the internet. And of course you're going into fucking Blackwing Lair or whatever, Ragnaros, right? And I'm like level 60 rogue. Let's go to Ragnaros. And then Ragnaros 2-shots me. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be resilient. So I respawn, I repair my gear, I go grind,
guys.
right? Because I can't clear instances, so I like grind on boars. There's no auction house. So I grind on boars for like 15 hours, and I sell them for some measly amount of silver, and then I repair my gear, and then I go in to fight Ragnaros again, and I wipe. This is what it's like to be depressed. Everything you do is harder.
If
people
only
don't understand that you're not depressed.
Healing,
the things that we take for granted is people who are mentally well, like, try to play WoW.
He's a gamer, just like you guys.
So I'm not disputing that your lives are bad, but what I think consistently helps is help.
Even though he's referencing 40-man Ragnaros, which I don't think has been relevant in about 12 years. Longer than that. Well, actually, no, if you count Classic, then pretty recently, to be fair. Okay, no, we'll be fair. Classic was pretty recent. We'll allow it.
And this is where it's incredibly challenging because some people will say, and I've had these people too. They'll be like, I've seen 6 therapists, 6 psychiatrists, nothing helps. So we're going to talk about that for a second. We're going to talk about help. Okay? Where's my fucking paper? Not this one. Here we go. So this is where I think there's a big challenge in therapy right now. So let's take a look at men's social relationships and mental health, okay? Most sex differences studies focus on 2 broad types of support. Emotional support, which includes emotional sustenance and empathy, for example. Someone being available to listen or offer sympathy during a time of crisis. Now hold on, don't read anymore. So if you're a dude in the audience today, or you know someone who's suicidal, has some suicidal ideation, right? Go get help for real. Go to the emergency room and get some help. And I would offer you, hello, I'm here to talk to you about your problems. We're going to talk about how you feel bad. We're going to talk about your feelings. I'm going to say, oh my God, that's so hard for you. That must be so hard for you. Oh my God, that must be so hard for you. That must be so hard for you. That's not what the men who come to my practice want. They love it. That's what they want. But I give it to them, they reject it. I squeeze them in little bits. What do they want? Hey, I want to do something about my life. I want to fix my problems, right? Because remember, so these people aren't mentally ill, their brain isn't malfunctioning, and they have objective problems, and they want, can y'all guess? They want instrumental support, which includes practical assistance or tangible help from others. For example, help that requires physical effort or financial aid. So this is, I'm not giving them loans, and I'm not helping them move. But what I tend to find is if you look at a lot of men's frustration with therapy, what they're really looking for is something called instrumental support. And this is not what the majority of our therapy is, this is not what the majority of therapists are trained on. We're trained in emotional support. But what we find is that like instrumental support is like really, really effective for men. So like when a dude, like literally I had my psychotherapy teacher, right? So I had a didactic 16 weeks of here's what psychotherapy is. And a psychoanalyst comes in and says, and maybe I'm doing them, they taught me a lot of good stuff, right? So they're not bad people, they're brilliant. But they're like, when a patient walks in and says, can you help me get a girlfriend? What are you supposed to say? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. And he's like, the right thing to say is, what makes you want a girlfriend? What's it like to not have a girlfriend? Those are all useful questions. But something that's happened in therapy is we've stopped accepting responsibility for the outcomes of our patients. We'll accept outcomes in terms of mental health measures. So we'll say like, okay, PHQ-9 score, GAD-7 score, we're going to reduce your anxiety, we're going to reduce your depression. That's going to be great. But as a profession, we've basically said like, we're not going to help you get a girlfriend, get a boyfriend. We're not going to help you get promoted. We're not going to help you be a millionaire. We can't do that. Which I also disagree with. Like, I think if there's anyone on the planet that can help you do that, it's actually going to be a therapist. Because we've got an awesome skill set. And what we see is like therapists who work with their clients do get those kinds of outcomes, but we become afraid to try to help people with instrumental support. So try to find a therapist, and I'd say you need to see 3, okay? Because it's about fit. And then recognize like, hey, I need help like accomplishing some of my goals, and this is what I would say to a therapist. I want to like accomplish certain things in life, and I want to better understand what are the things inside me that prevent me from doing what I want. Can you please help me with this? Right? And throw in a please. It's part of what helps in terms of asking for help. So step number 1, don't kill yourself. Step number 2, get emergency services if you need them. Step number 3, find a therapist. Because this is still the best evidence-based approach. When we look at the swaths of humanity, we still know that there's one intervention that works pretty well, which is psychiatric help. So we're going to do that. And there's a lot more that we're going to do. Next thing that you need to do is work on alexithymia. Alexithymia is the inability to tell what your internal emotional state is. And here's why. So if we look at a lot of the behaviors that create the circumstances that make you not want to live your life, a lot of those are due to emotions. So you may not think that they're due to emotions, but this is what happens. We have negative emotions. Negative emotions are supposed to prompt us towards action. So emotions are a source of information and they're a source of motivation. They give us energy and they give us info, okay? There's a whole segment on this on the trauma guide where we kind of explain this. So if y'all are interested in if you like what I say, definitely check that out. So the problem though is that as men, we're taught to suppress our emotions, and on top of that, we engage in behaviors that further suppress our emotions. So if you think about the most powerful motivators for behavior, they're actually emotions, right? Any movie you look at, some guy gets bullied and he's like, never again, like, I'm gonna get swollen, I'm gonna be...
It's like, yeah, obviously your therapist shouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna help you get a girlfriend. That's obviously fucking retarded. But yeah, the life skills should come a bit from therapy. Learning to manage adversity and put effort in to getting a job showering, leaving the house. You know, these are things that are going to lead to improvements down the line, right? I don't know, man.
Right, this is what happens in all of our movies, right? Mean Girls, we see that too. We're like, Lindsay Lohan is like, I feel lots of emotion, I'm gonna become the winner because of it. So negative emotion is a powerful source of information and a powerful source of motivation, but the problem is that it hurts. And so as we look at our lives and we think there's no way that I can actually fix this,
Dr. K is going to personally wingman.
The problem is when I suppress it, it doesn't go away. I just suppress it. And we also know that suppressing your emotions is a large source of willpower drain. So if you're suppressing your emotions and you don't feel them, you may not even be doing it consciously, you're actually like cutting your willpower bar in half. Right? I don't know if you'll play Elden Ring, but like in Elden Ring, there's this one particular attack that reduces your max health bar. So even if you heal, you can only go up so much. And this is what suppressing our emotions does for us. And so then what happens is not only are we losing...
I saw a YouTube short about soap being estrogenic, so I try not to shower very often. Based.
Access to this powerful motivational tool, but it is costing us a lot to suppress this stuff. So what we really need to do is get in touch with our emotions and process those fuckers. Let's process them. What does it mean to process them? That means to make it go away forever. Right? So think about that. This is what we try to do. We're like, I don't like my emotions. Yeah, I know you don't like them. That's because they suck. And we want to make them go away from forever. But the way that we're going to do that is by processing and healing, not drinking. Drinking doesn't make them go away forever. It just makes them go away for a little while and they come back worse. So we look at literally studies on alcohol. What we know is that they make you feel better from a mood perspective temporarily, and they make you feel worse over time. And then we get stuck in these addictive patterns where I'm going to do this thing today because it makes me feel good today, and then I'm screwing over tomorrow me, and then screwing over the next me, and then you get stuck in this cycle. How do you break the cycle? By confronting your emotions. You gotta let that shit out, baby. Let's go. And this is where we need companionship. We need support. Right? So there's one of the papers that I showed today talks about male support and how it's like really good. Like bros need bros. We don't have space for each other anymore, and women are struggling from this too. I don't know where women hang out anymore. And so step number 1 is get help. Step number 2 is manage your emotions. And the cool thing is step number 3 is like instrumental support. See, once you do number 1 and number 2, then you are actually in a place to fix your life. Because the problem is that we try to jump straight to step number 3. But when we're jumping straight to step number 3, we're like handicapped. We have so many debuffs that attempts that we make to fix our lives, like we're driving with a leaky gas tank.
Have you tried
we make
cleansing?
A critical mistake, which is that I tried 100% and it didn't work. Which is not, you're not wrong there. And by the way, this is when we get back to these kinds of comments, right?
You tried using cleanse?
Right, so like, this is what does it mean when someone is like objectively hopeless? Like what we mean by that? What I'm talking about here is that these people try and they don't get anywhere. So then and I think it's reasonable, right? So if we were like an alien species and we saw someone perform an experiment where they tried to improve their life 6,000 times and it didn't work, what do you think is the objective conclusion? Improving my life is impossible, right? That's like a reasonable scientific conclusion. Now, their study is flawed. I don't think that's actually correct in some way, but I think it's a reasonable, objective interpretation.
Wait, but he's saying it again. Why is he saying it again?
Driving with a leaky gas tank. And then we make a critical mistake, which is that I tried 100% and it didn't work. Which is not, you're not wrong there. And by the way, this is when we get back to these kinds of comments, right? Right, so like this is what does it mean when someone is like objectively hopeless? Like what we mean by that? What I'm talking about here is that these people try and they don't get anywhere. So then and I think it's reasonable, right? So if we were like an alien species and we saw someone perform an experiment where they tried to improve their life 6,000 times and it didn't work, what do you think is the objective conclusion? Improving my life is impossible, right? That's like a reasonable scientific conclusion. Now, their study is flawed. I don't think that's actually correct in some way, but I think it's a reasonable, objective interpretation.
That's not objective.
But that doesn't mean that they're malfunctioning. That just means that
it's not
the way
objective.
that they've been playing the game of life is going to result in those kinds of results. And so then comes the instrumental support. And what I've actually found is that, like, as a therapist, doing a lot of instrumental support, especially for my male patients, is very helpful. It's part of the reason we created a coaching program. Right? So I recently heard, anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we recently approached by somewhat, like a group of people. Anyway.
Yeah, the people arguing for him do a better job explaining it than him. It's fucking crazy.
So the point is, like, we created like this coaching program. So because I noticed that there was a deficiency of instrumental support, right? And at the time, I was at McLean Hospital, which is a great hospital, like arguably best psychiatric hospital in the country, in the United States, probably one of the top 5 in the world. And so like the chief of psychiatry there, the CEO, was like, hey, you should really check out this cool thing we have here called the Institute of Coaching. And I was like, this is cool. Right? So they started an institute that's all about coaching, which was started by a therapist who specializes in positive psychology, works with a lot of corporations. And so there's instrumental support. And the whole thing is that if you want to put together your life, this is what it takes. It takes these 3 things. The first thing is to not die. Bluntly. Right? In the great words of Randy Marsh, I didn't hear no bell. The only time you lose at life is when you ring the bell.
Yeah, Kenny, do you want to come back on? Kenny, do you want to come back on? Because I can easily destroy that point. I'm not going to do it from chat, but I'll do it on Discord. If you want to come on, embarrass yourself.